Okay, maybe we should try that again. Good morning. Glad to see people. And we've got a few guests here today as well as folks signed up. We're going to start with the Governance and Finance Committee of the Natural Resources Commission. And then following that, we'll move into the full commission meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over first to, we've got Parks Division that we're going over your budget. So welcome. Glad to have you.
All right. Good morning. Dan Lord, Chief of Finance and Operations Division. I'll be spending a couple minutes with you here out of the gates talking about really a critical juncture point in the budget making process as it pertains to fiscal year 27, which is set to start on October 1st. So I'll be giving a couple of updates, but then we'll shift over to my colleagues and friends at the Parks and Recreation Division. Very happy to have Buffy and Tom with me here today. So I know I've been gone for a couple months, but this is a graphic that I've shared before that really articulates the length and complexity of the budget process. So the white boxes, you can kind of look at this as a clock, you know, starting up at the 12 o'clock hour. Back last August, we present and put forward what we call our proposals for change. These go through a prioritization process internally. They come forward from each division, and it's really trying to get the support from the executive division on what we'd like to make request of up through the state budget office. And in turn, the goal is to get into the governor's proposed budget, which is one of three versions. So the governor did release her budget back in February. If you follow the clock along, we've been pretty much on track this cycle this year. And back in May, we had a pretty important part of the process, the revenue estimating conference. So this is the last checkpoint with the state's general fund, the tax base, which really is a big driver for decision making with the legislature. So between those two milestones of the governor releasing her budget, that second revenue estimating conference, we had both the House and the Senate introduce their own versions of not only our budget, but all the other state agency budgets as well. So we're currently awaiting what we call targets. So targets are a capped dollar amount allocated to specific state departments or function areas, typically aligned at the top level with our agency's overall budget as well as the state's general fund. Those targets serve as a ceiling for negotiations. So negotiations are pretty much captured over here in conference committees. So late May and mid-June, again, we're right in that sweet spot. That's our next anticipated step. That is our opportunity for department leadership, our appropriations subcommittee chair. So in the Senate, that's Senator Cherry. In the House, that's Representative Borton. This year, we'll have State Budget Office joining us, as well as representation from the governor's office to finalize what our budget will look like in fiscal year 27. So a little bit of optimism in terms of the timing. You know, last year, the budget process extended into October, went extremely late. There is a statutory date that doesn't have a whole lot of teeth in early July, but there's still some optimism that the budgeting process will take place since we're in an election year, allowing officials to go back to their districts to continue to campaign. So there's a lot on this slide, but this is a reflection of those three different versions of the budget at an extremely high level. So I'll kind of start at the top and just kind of work my way around the chart to familiarize the commissioners. So when we say executive, that is the governor's office. That is the version of the budget that was put forward again back in February. FTEs, full-time employees. General fund, again, the state's general fund, the tax base, the apportionment that we would be set to receive, and then the gross overall budget number for the department. These numbers are represented in thousands. So when you see the total appropriations line, starting with executive, that is $606 million. As you work your way across into the Senate version and the House version, you also note at the top the different bills. So all the devil in the details are out there within Senate Bill 878, which has had one substitution, and then the House Bill 5619. I think that the main thing we wanted to represent here is just the difference between the budgets, which you can really articulate on that bottom line. So if you think of our executive governor's version, we really look at that as the most optimist. So our proposals for change that we put forward last year that were incorporated into the governor's budget included things like the hunting and fishing license fee adjustments. It included adjustments to watercraft registration. It included additional funding to our educational program, Nature Awaits. And you can see some of the bulleted text that talk about what may or may not be included in the Senate and the House versions. So the House version is really one that we've put a lot of emphasis on. Again, it's just 1/3 of the process. It is its own and independent version. But just like last year, seeing substantial reductions, proposed cuts in terms of full-time employees, as well as general fund. And then the third component is the lack of support for some of those fee increases. So some of those differences, that equates to 232 full-time employees. So I know we hear the term and phrase ghost positions. Last year we gave up about 40 vacant FTE positions. This is primarily a result of Fisheries and Wildlife divisions reducing, their employment over the course of the last several years as a balance to their budget and the lack of a change in those revenue streams. But 232 across the department is about 10%. It's a huge impact. We have no more ghost positions. These would be funded real positions, as we call them, and that varies whether they're full-time employees or seasonal, because those are fractional in terms of a 1.0 FTE. The other big thing to point out with the House version is that proposed reduction of general fund. So last year it was a very similar amount, about 50% of the overall general fund that we receive as a department. But this year what was different, it was very targeted in terms of impacts to specific divisions. And I'll talk about some of those impacts here in a minute. Also, again, the overall proposed reduction of not passing some of those revenue streams that we're hoping to see increases. The combination adds up to $99 million, almost $100 million of a reduction within that House version. So again, just looking at beyond the numbers, right? I think about people and programs. So where are some of these impacts that would have a real change on what we do, the services we provide, the expectation that's out there for the public. Some of these impact statements, again, reflect the House version only. So I don't want to say this is what is going to happen. It's a scenario that could happen. So what does that mean when you combine those general fund reductions, those FTE reductions, and the other restricted cuts that we'd have to make without passing new and improved revenue streams? It means that we could lose 1/3 of our department's conservation officers. It means the elimination of the state's wildlife lab. It means closing 4 of our 13 customer service centers. It means closing 6 of our historic sites. It's reducing half the production and stocking of walleye and muskie. It's reducing hours at 11 visitor centers and reducing our staff shooting ranges by 20 to 30% and shortening camping seasons out in the state forest camping network. So these are real impactful changes. We still have optimism in terms of those negotiation processes and having 2/3 in terms of the executive version and the Senate version to be able to support where we need improvements, where we need increases, and hopefully maintaining at a minimum what we're able to do and provide for the public. So I'll bounce back to our current year, fiscal year 26, and this is really to set the stage for my colleagues with Parks and Recreation Division. So back to where the funding comes from, where the funding goes. Again, these are a current fiscal year representation at appropriated levels. We still need those revenue streams to come in to be able to fill the percentages and the dollar amounts that you see on the screen. A couple of outliers, federal at 19%, the biggest wedge of the pie, if you will, which continued scrutiny with terms and conditions of our grant agreements from year to year, unknowns, what have been stable programs and fund sources for decades. And then bouncing back over to the state's general fund, 14%. It's an important part of our budget. When you take the entirety of the state's tax base, as an agency, we receive less than 1%. So I try to make that point every time I can get the opportunity, because I think a lot of the public perceives that their tax dollars are going into the areas that they care about, but we get less than 1%. Everything else is a combination of state restricted funds. So restricted in terms of where the funding comes from and where it can go. The highlight's very specific to Parks and Recreation. We're going to bounce all over this pie chart. Park Improvement Fund, as you can see right after federal, one of the largest slices, that's primarily camping revenue. You can bounce to the other side over to waterways. that's our watercraft registration, which again was a proposal in the governor's budget because that hasn't been adjusted since 1993. We have the Park Endowment Fund, another very important source that comes from lease revenues and royalties from oil, mineral, and gas exploration on state-owned rights. Another important component of that is 30% of that revenue stream from the last 10 years has come from the Eagle Mine in the Upper Peninsula, the only nickel mine in North America, which is ceasing production. So some concerns with that source. The smaller wedges that I know Tom and Buffy will talk about, ORV, snowmobile, again, user contributions, pay-to-play models, somewhat weather dependent. And then we have private and gifts, a small slice of the pie, but as you'll see from parks, they're very creative and a lot of support in this space within their division. And then forest recreation. I think I might have bounced quickly through two of those slides, but the second one is, again, where the funding goes. Parks and Recreation, as you can see, the largest division, which primarily divisions are represented by their names, and some program areas like capital outlay, our construction arm, and grants. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tom.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Bissett. I'm the Assistant Chief of the Parks and Recreation Division. I've been with the division for 31 years, almost all of it in operations. I started my career straightening nails for building projects and cleaning paint and rust off of picnic table bolts because we couldn't afford new ones. That mindset, doing whatever it takes, stretching every dollar, is part of why I care so much about the budget and why we're talking about this story today. This slide gives you a sense of the scope of what our division manages. We have over 700 full-time staff. We have 1,300 summer workers and welcome about 38 million visitors each year. We manage 103 state parks, soon to be 104 with the new park in Flint. We oversee more than 13,000 miles of state designated trails, over 1,200 boating access sites, 19 state managed harbors, and 63 local grant and aid harbors. And we support roughly 1.2 million camping and lodging nights annually. Before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to our staff. During our peak season, we have about 2,000 people working to protect Michigan's most treasured natural and cultural resources and keep these places special, safe, and accessible. You're going to hear a lot about numbers today, but the real story is the people that make it all possible. In addition to working with the NRC, we're guided by several advisory groups: the Michigan State Park Advisory Committee, the Waterways Commission, the Trails Advisory Council and its work groups, and the Belle Isle Park Advisory Committee. One person I want to call out is Chuck Nelson. He's the vice chair of the State Park Advisory Committee. Chuck was a longtime professor at Michigan State University, and he's guided scores of our employees over the years in the responsible natural resources and park management that we've established today. Many of our staff, myself included, have benefited from the professional foundation that he helped build. Our total division funding this year, including operations, capital outlay, and grants, is $193 million. A few things to note: 97% of that funding comes from restricted sources. That includes user fees from camping, the recreation passport, watercraft registrations, snowmobile and ORV fees, and, as Dan mentioned, mineral royalties that support the Park Endowment Fund. The Recreation Passport grants motorized vehicle entry to all 103 state parks, 140 plus state forest campgrounds, and over 1,000 boating access sites and thousands of miles of trails. 31 years ago, general fund support was nearly 70% of our budget. Today, it's about 3%. As Dan mentioned earlier, the Park Endowment Fund is affected by volatility in both investment revenue and mineral royalty. In the next few slides, we're going to take a deeper look at our largest source, the Park Improvement Fund. As you saw in the last slide, the Park Improvement Fund makes up 45% of our total funding. Within that fund, camping revenue is the largest source. We're grateful for both camping fees and the Recreation Passport, and that they both adjust with CPI. Camping adjusts on a 2-year cycle. The recreation passport is reviewed annually. We last increased camping and lodging fees in 2025, and the recreation passport fee increased by $1 this year. These regular adjustments prevent large jumps that would be harder on our visitors. We love our campers, and camping fees really are the backbone of our division's funding. I grew up camping. One of my earliest memories is being crammed into a single tent at Tawas Point State Park with my family of 5 and 2 small dogs, all of us packed in, loving every single minute of it. Absolutely. It was the affordable family vacation. Those summers made me fall in love with our state parks long before I ever worked for one. And I see that same love in our visitors today. That's why this funding source matters. Campers give a lot back to this system, and we try to honor that by taking care of the places that shaped so many of us. Here's what the Park Improvement Fund looks like going forward. In blue, you can see we're projecting about $94 to $95 million in revenue over the next 2 to 3 years. In orange, though, you can see the challenge. Our expenses are increasing faster than our revenue. Staffing and benefit costs go up every year. Inflation is affecting supplies and materials, and fixed costs like utilities and trash services have risen sharply. We've had to discuss cutting back on seasonal hours to cover it. That's the kind of trade-off that we're facing more frequently. The red line shows the fund balance, and we project that by 2029, the fund balance will be depleted to a point where we'll have to reduce expenditures. That means cutting back on operations or reducing our capital investments. From an operations standpoint, that increasing cost hits hard. Years ago, I could buy a box of 100 trash bags. Feels like you can buy about 10 for the same price these days. And when your trash contract goes up more than 130% over a decade, you start seeing those operational dollars disappear quickly. Michigan's America's Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funding for state parks, was $273 million from the COVID-19 Relief Investment Fund. That's been used to complete or start 122 planned improvement projects at 55 state parks. This reduces a decades-long need of backlog of repairs and enables new park development, like the park in Flint. In 2025, we allocated a one-time $15 million supplemental to help with critical infrastructure needs that weren't covered by ARPA. This is represented by the declining fund balance that you see here. Many of the ARPA project estimates increased during COVID, and this supplemental funding allowed us to fund 7 additional priority projects, including a $6 million dam repair at Metamora Hadley Recreation Area. The one-time ARPA relief helped, but I've been around long enough to know that a single dam repair that costs $6 million can wipe out an entire year's capital outlay budget. Next is our waterways program, which funds recreational boating. Our largest revenue source here is the gas tax. We receive 2% of the state gas tax, and we benefited from the increase that was part of last year's budget deal. We expect to generate about $13 million more in 2026 and potentially $18 million more in later years. That will help us address an identified need in waterways of more than $100 million. Watercraft registrations make up a smaller portion of this fund, and those fees, as Dan mentioned, have not increased since 1993. Something that always gets my attention is that a $100,000 pontoon registered in Michigan could cost as little as $23 a year for registration. My 16-foot motorized fishing boat costs $42. That difference highlights how long it's been since registration fees were updated and underscores the imbalance in the revenue model. We are currently witnessing some of these situations unfolding in real time. This spring's critical water levels at the Sheboygan Dam and Lock Complex, driven by 500-year flood conditions, have placed our waterways funding under significant strain. The cost associated with this as an incident and the emergency response combined with additional weather-related damage in the region, now total in the millions already. Water levels in the area remain at critical levels even today. I want to highlight some key challenges with our funding. Visitation has increased dramatically. From 2000 to 2010, visitation held steady around 18 to 20 million people. From 2010 to 2023, that increased 131%, from around 17 million to a peak of 40 million in 2023. Last year, we had 38.75 million visitors. But during that time, the Recreation Passport increased 40% with CPI, from 10 to 14. As mentioned, it raised to 15 this year. Before the Recreation Passport began in 2010, the cost of an annual resident pass was $24. Our funding is not keeping pace with our use. We've added responsibilities, about 7 new units in the past 15 years, and PRD assumed management of state forest campgrounds and the statewide trails program. Meanwhile, operations costs have risen sharply. As mentioned, trash contracts are up 131% since 2010, and utilities are up 148%. All the while, stewardship, which is a core part of our mission, makes up less than 5% of our operating budget. These challenges all connect back to our user fee model, and certain users contribute more to our system's budget than others. Campers and lodging guests make up about 8% of our total visitors, about 3.16 million people, but they contribute more than 27% of our revenue. That's about $52 million annually. It's also difficult to adjust fees that aren't tied to CPI. For example, the governor's budget recommends raising watercraft registration fees. This is supported by the Waterways Commission and the boating industry, because as mentioned, those fees have not changed since 1993. Participation can be limited as well. Only about 38% of Michigan's residents purchased the Recreation Passport, even though it supports both state parks and local parks through grants. When instituted, we were hoping for a 70% participation. An opt-out model was proposed in prior budgets, but not supported. So we're working with our advisory committee to explore other options. And when it comes to trails, most funding comes from motorized permits. Funding for non-motorized trails is very limited. There remains no user fee or dedicated funding source for them, even though demand has exploded. During COVID, our non-motorized trails saw some of the biggest increases I've witnessed in my years in parks. Trailheads were packed by 9 a.m., parking lots were overflowing into the ditches, and we had people hiking, biking, and running, walking dogs in numbers we'd never seen before. Some trails that used to have a dozen users on a weekday suddenly saw hundreds. All of this is great. It means that our people are connecting with their outdoors, but the funding to maintain these trails never grew with that demand. And that mismatch is one of our biggest challenges today.
As far as the passport, you think it's an educational thing or why is participation so low? I mean, I got 2 kids, shared vehicle. We got it on theirs. My wife has it on hers. I have it on mine. But why is it just an awareness thing or what are we missing here as far as participation?
I truly don't believe it's an educational thing any longer. I mean, the Recreation Passport's been around since 2010.
It's just the interest thing.
So the biggest thing is I have 4 vehicles in my family. I purchased a Recreation Passport for all 4 of them.
Right on, yeah.
Right. But people have to cut costs somewhere. And if there's a way to cut costs that's available, they're going to do it. And who can blame them? So if you put it on one car and that's the car you take to state parks, then that's the way it's going to work.
Yeah. Just $10. right?
Well, it's 15 now, but
It's
yeah, to
15
your
now,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Get your passport books, please.
We do, and we partner with the Secretary of State, and we have materials that are included in your registration renewal. Although I will say that the majority of people now probably go to a kiosk or go to the internet to do that. So there's less face time with a leaflet that comes in the mail or something like that. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to stress what a value it is. Okay, for the next slide, as you can see, the Recreation Passport continues to be the most affordable park pass in the region. And honestly, it's cheaper than many of the county park systems right here in Michigan. Michigan's Recreation Passport, again, is only $15, where a resident park pass for Ingham County is $40 and $50 if you don't live in the county. To put that in perspective, I've talked to families who tell me they can take their kids camping, hit a trail, launch a boat, or spend a day at the beach all year for the price of one takeout night to get pizza. During COVID, when people were getting outside in record numbers, we heard over and over again that the Recreation Passport is the best deal that they've had all year. And that's great. We want it to stay affordable. But affordability isn't alone enough to solve our long-term funding challenges. As a reminder, resident passports were $24 in 2009 before we switched to the Recreation Passport. That's 16 years ago. So it's still $9 cheaper than it was 16 years ago. Given rising visitation and the growing strain on our infrastructure, our advisory committee and stakeholders, like Environment Michigan, are recommending a fee increase or an adjustment to help ensure long-term sustainable funding for the park system. The goal is not to make it expensive. It's to make sure that we can keep the doors open, we can keep the restrooms repaired, and keep the trails, beaches, and campgrounds in good condition for millions of people that use them. Even with the ARPA funding we're grateful to receive, we still have a $747 million unfunded maintenance backlog across our parks, waterways, and trails. Our fiscal year capital outlay budget for 2026 is $33 million. That's only about 4% of our need. Some of the examples shown here show what we're facing. The roof beams at the Michigan Iron and Industry Museum cracking under snow load. Boating access sites with damaged ramps and approaches that look all too familiar to boaters, like the ones here in Macomb County. Trail bridge failures like the one shown here from a snowmobile trail route in Luce County. There are also roads and utilities in parks like Fisherman's Island, Burt Lake, that are in serious need of investment. Along the Detroit River, Greyhaven State Harbor needs about $5.5 million in improvements, and nearby boating access sites like St. Jean and Delray need about $3 million each if we want to improve public access to the Detroit River. The reality is that we're struggling just to take care of what we do already. And without additional support, we can't expand to take on new infrastructure or meet growing public demand. So everyone here is probably wondering how we manage all of this and we still carry out our mission. Two things, our people and our partners. Our staff continue to innovate and find efficiencies wherever they can. But that only takes us so far. Emptying trash bags and reusing them only takes you so far. We rely heavily on partnerships, philanthropic support, and grants to help maintain our level of service. We've had tremendous support from organizations like the Mott Community Foundation, the New Flint State Park, the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation for improvements at Belle Isle, and many county governments who step up and help operate or co-manage parks. Friends groups play a huge role across the state. The Belle Isle Conservancy and other partners, from accessibility organizations to the Bob Ross Foundation, help support programs and opportunities like free reservable track chairs or our annual Run for the Trees, which has become a national fundraiser. I'll wrap up by saying this. The Parks and Recreation Division has always burned bright, no matter the challenge. After 31 years in this division, I've seen it firsthand. But even the brightest fire needs wood. And we all know these days wood is getting more expensive. With rising visitation, growing responsibilities, and increasing infrastructure needs, sustainable funding is more important than ever. And again, I'm just an operations guy. I'm good at mowing lawns, fixing toilets, and registering camps. Budgets are not my natural habitat. So for the tough questions, I've brought along our budget section chief, Buffy Coulter. She's the one that actually understands the numbers. I just know when the grass needs cutting. So thank you very much, and we're happy to take your questions.
Has this been brought before the House and the Senate? And I don't mean just your division, but every division. We had dinner with some legislators last night, and they had the impression that when they ask the question, they don't get good answers from the department. And I think that's tragic. So, question.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. Last year, I know in the House Appropriations, they started by bringing in individual divisions to give the deep dive, kind of like what you've heard here. And I know former Chief Ron Olson did present at that point in time, but they only went through a couple. So we're always answering the call whenever there's an invitation to do it in that type of a public setting and put the information out there.
Due to the urgency, I think certainly appropriations, you may want to reach out to them, as well as Natural Resource Committee at the House. I think that would be appropriate and appreciated, and I think they're awaiting.
Another quick response. Each year we do a formal presentation for both the appropriation subcommittees. So we do it at the department scale, and we have presented on some of these needs. Deputy Director Lott here.
Thank you. That is not an accurate statement about the department. So I just wanted to put on record that we have been over there pounding the pavement repeatedly, as have you. Thank you for that. We are constantly in these committees. Every time there's a bill up, we provide information, we provide bill analyses. We've even met with people that aren't really interested in natural resources because we want them to know what we do. And that way they are informed when they vote on things or when they're asked about things. So we've heard that a couple times from some of the folks I think that you're mentioning, but we have provided, I mean, hundreds of pages of documentation, especially since last summer, on all of the issues that you're hearing about from every division and every budget that you've seen here. The legislature has seen all of these budgets as well, these presentations. And like Dan said, we've done individual ones, and then we did department level ones as well. So it's whether or not they want to ask us questions and get more information, but we have really worked hard, and I want to commend our staff for doing that in the budget round because it has been a really long year for them. So I just wanted to come forth and say that.
Thank you. In fact, I think it's vitally important that now that we have heard from our representatives and they don't have the same impression, that now is the urgency, right? So I think it's vitally important, strike when the iron's hot, and the iron is definitely hot. And if they can't make it out of committee, I'd continue to bring that forward and be more assertive than waiting for an invitation. Thank you.
Go ahead. All right. Your day use has increased dramatically, and it looks like it probably is about the same timing as we put in the passport moved from. So it's interesting that we have increased day use to that degree, which we had hoped that people would take better advantage of the parks. Is that putting additional burden on, though, also? I mean, The whole intent of the park passport was to broaden the base, the number of people that bought it, which it was effective at first, but it's outpacing. It sounds like the costs are now outpacing what we budgeted for that.
Well, I think anytime you see increased visitation like we have, it puts many different strains in many different places. And, you know, I don't like to use analogies like we use more toilet paper, right? But when you have to check the bathrooms at a busy day use area,
Yeah.
you
Keeping
know, you're
bathrooms
talking about
cleaner.
doing it constantly.
Yeah,
You know, I worked at Pontiac Lake for a decade. We had 3 bathroom buildings in the day use area. And by the time you got done cleaning one and got to the next, you had to turn around and do all 3 because we were so busy. That went from before when we had to check them once or twice a day. And examples over and over and over again. So yeah, I think it has a huge effect on cost, on staffing, on the amount of supplies that you go through and the utilities.
Madam Chair, if I could, I'll add another,
Mhm.
point to keep in mind is when we're talking about recreation passport, coming in your car is one way to get into the park. I think
Mhm.
as trails have exploded, the Iron Belt Trail, now there's other opportunities to walk in and bike in that doesn't require a passport, which I think is part of the expanded use and access to the
That's a
state
good
park
point.
network as well.
I would just share a quick story. Several years ago, I thought I was being romantic, and I wasn't. I just figured I'd pack up my family and we just head up to Tequanimon, and we just find a spot to camp. And we get up there, and along the whole stretch of Lake Superior, we went from Tequanimon all the way over the Grand Marais, no vacancy. Kept going over the Munising, no vacancy. Kept going to Marquette, no vacancy. But we stopped at each campsite, each park along the way, and just the beauty of these different parks. What a jewel for the state of Michigan and residents. And they were all full. They were all full. And then I got fleeced in Marquette for a hotel room, and my wife assured me I was not being romantic. Let's just go and we'll figure it out. But the parks that I saw along the way, just unbelievable. And it's what a resource for the state of Michigan and the citizens. So good stuff. Dan, a little bird whispered in my ear that you might be leaving us. And first of all, I want to say congratulations. But I also want to say what a loss for the state of Michigan. I enjoy your knowledge, your professionalism, and the state of Michigan has a little bit of a loss with you leaving. But I want to say congratulations to you moving on.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Still going to do related work, just in a different role, different seat. So look forward to continue to overlap with the department, maybe help solve some problems from a different space.
You stole my thunder. I was going to thank you. You've been tremendous. Having someone that oversees the programs you do that's a true problem solver it's not only rare, but it's a gift to the organization. So we're going to miss you. The commission will miss you, and I know the agency will miss you. Michigan won't, because I know you're staying in Michigan right now, so we're pleased about that. I do have a quick question. You mentioned at the beginning, Eagle Mine. How much revenue has Eagle Mine brought in since it started operating? Any idea?
Buffy. I know it's been 30% of the overall stream. I don't know if we've got a
I'm just
pie
curious.
chart that
That's
shows.
all right.
It's in the millions on an annual basis. I can say that much, but we can get you the specific number.
Okay. I lost a lot of sleep over permitting that mine. I'm just wondering how much we brought back into investing into it.
And correct me if
Other
I'm wrong, but I believe some of that goes to Department of Ag for Eagle Mine in the fact that I served on the, what was that committee? Sorry. Rural Development Fund Board. And that money that came to the Rural Development Fund Board under the Department of Agriculture went to rural businesses.
typically the revenues go back to the originating fund source of the parcels involved. So there could be something there, but I'm not off the top of my head.
Wasn't a lot of money, but it
Okay.
was
Okay.
enough to give away.
Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you. We have brainstorms on how to close the gap. All right, while we're still in governance and finance committee, we've had a few of us have had discussions regarding our processes. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Commissioner Fewens, to make a few comments. I've shared, sitting at your desk, I handed out a framework that Commissioner Fewens put together just for thought. We're not going to go over it today, but if you'd read it, commissioners, if you read it at your leisure, then we'll have some more discussion moving forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So over the past few months, I've spent a lot of time talking one-on-one with stakeholders. And while people may disagree on specific deer regulations, the one thing I've heard consistently is the lack of confidence in both our process and our ability to clearly explain where we're trying to go. Stakeholders want to understand how decisions are made, whether their input is being considered, and what goals we are ultimately trying to achieve. I don't think we should dismiss these concerns. Public trust is our most valuable asset. That's why I view the scientific deer management resolution as only one part of a larger effort. At its core, it's about establishing clear goals and measurable benchmarks for deer management moving forward. The other part of that effort is governance. Over the past month, I wrote a governance reform white paper, which is focused on the commission's process. I want to be clear that this paper reflects the perspective of one commissioner and one commissioner only. It's not intended to be the final word on governance reform, and it's certainly not a finished product. I see it as a starting point for a broader conversation amongst commissioners, department staff, stakeholders, and others who care about the credibility and effectiveness of this institution. I know others will have different perspectives and ideas other than my own, and that's exactly the point. One thing that stood out to me during my first year on the commission is how much our institutional knowledge and procedures is passed down informally. That's not a criticism of anyone. It's simply an example of how some of our processes have evolved over time without being formally documented. If we expect to modernize our approach to wildlife management, we must be willing to modernize our governance processes as well. To me, the scientific deer management resolution and the governance reform discussion are two sides of the same coin. One is about improving the science that informs our decision. The other is about improving the process through which our decisions are made. Neither effort is going to eliminate disagreement. Wildlife management is complex, and reasonable people will continue to reach different conclusions. But I believe people are more likely to accept decisions when they understand the process, believe their voices were heard, and can see the goals that we're trying to achieve. My hope is that a two-pronged process will help put the Natural Resources Commission on stronger footing moving forward. By improving both our science and our governance, we can build trust, improve transparency, and strengthen the commission's relationship with the stakeholders that we serve. I think this is going to be a heavy lift. I'm looking forward to it. I'm committed to it. And I put together a 17-page white paper. This shows me what I do in my spare time, which is not exciting. Like I said, I've already thought about other things to add to this, which was kind of sad in a way, because it's already pretty lengthy. But I really, truly believe that if we do these two things, we will set the commission, we will set the department in a better light with the residents and the citizens of the state of Michigan. I feel like we've been our own worst enemy, and we're shooting ourselves in the foot with the lack of good governance procedures. When I came on to the commission, I was surprised that there's no handbook. There's no bylaws.
Hmm.
There's such a lack of, and once again, this is not pointing fingers at anyone, but we can do better. We must do better. I'm committed to it. If the only thing I do here in my time is commit as a commissioner is to push through a governance package, I'll look at that as a success. So moving forward, I want to start the conversation and I'm willing to do the heavy lifting.
Thank you, Commissioner Fewens.
Madam Chair,
Yep, Commissioner Walters.
I would like to commend Commissioner Fewens for his effort and timeliness of this document. I think it's absolutely vital that this move forward. In fact, mentioning the fact that he has other ideas that needs to go in this. I don't really care about the length of this as long as it's done correctly. So if there are additional items that need to be entered into this document, I encourage that. And I would say you must live a very boring life to put a 17-page document in a white paper. But thank you for doing it. And I commend your boring life.
Other comments? Well, it's my hope that we'll take your white paper and turn it into a commission policy and procedures to be followed. And I too commend you to spend the time to commit this to paper and us thinking through how we can make this process better for not only the woman, but also the commission. So with that concludes the Governance and Finance Committee this morning. We'll move into the commission meeting. Do any of the commissioners, do we need to take a short break? Are you ready to rock and roll into the meeting? All right. Call the June commission meeting of the Natural Resources Commission to order. I'd ask that everybody silence your phones. I forgot to do it before the committee meeting. So now if you do that, I'd appreciate it. We'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Walters, we'll start with you and
Sorry for my tardiness. My conference call went late, but John Walters from Indian River.
Peter Lee, Grand Rapids.
I'm Becky Humphreys from Lowell.
Brandon Funes from the cherry capital of the world.
And
Nathan Gamble from the Attorney General's office.
Shannon Lott, Natural Resource Deputy.
all right. I failed to mention what time it was. It is 10:19. I think it was probably approximately 10:18 when we called the meeting to order. So today we have an agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Approval of the meeting minutes from May 13th. I know I made a few edits. People reviewed those. Any additional edits?
Yes, please. And I shared this with Craig. I just received the minutes yesterday and reviewed them. There was a fisheries presentation last month. And during that presentation, I requested that the Uncharted Committee from the Fisheries Division come forward, obviously not this month, but perhaps next, to discuss the Uncharted Committee and what they're dealing with, what their issues are, and how to respond to those issues. So I encourage them to do so, but that did not reflect in the minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any other edits or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Okay, one note for everybody. We have mostly migrated to new emails that are in the state email system. Bear with us. It's not been the smoothest transition in the world. We did it during the middle of the Deere process and added a great deal of frustration for all of us. But nonetheless, if you go to email us at this point, all of our emails now have @michigan.gov, and they have been changed on it'll come with our names, and then I'll have Michigan. Pardon?
Does it matter?
Yeah, they're all on the webpage. Just go to the webpage and you should be able to find them all listed there for us. And if you'd make a note of that, we would appreciate it.
Not sure that the capitalization is necessary. Pardon me? Brooke, is that true? I don't believe it's case sensitive.
The transition has not been smooth, so bear with us, okay? We are struggling along this way, but we're doing our very best to make sure that there's good record of all your comments in the system that is retrievable. So with that, Deputy Director, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. We've got one of our favorite things to talk about here, and that is the Michigan Wildlife Council. We get usually an annual update, so I'm going to invite them to I think it's Jason today, Jason Garvin, up to the table for us. There they are.
While they're coming up, I failed to mention Rose Stewart and your class, the Glasson Scholars, are joining us here today. We have 13 Glasson Scholars, so we're glad to have you here today and look forward to talking to you in the future. Welcome.
Okay. Jason Garvin, Chair of the Michigan Wildlife Council. Glad to be here. With me is Nick Petrushka from Fusion 92. Also in the crowd, we have John Spielis, Don Levy, and Dan Olfig from the Michigan Wildlife Council. And before I go any further, just like to say we are meeting at 2 p.m. today, and see what we are planning for the future. Okay. So just a brief history. And then I'll turn it over to Nick because everybody only wants to see the fun stuff. So I'll be quick. So the Michigan Wildlife Council was established in 2013. We have 9 members appointed by the governor, and our focus is public education. We run a educational campaign funded by $1 from the sale of every base hunting license and all species fishing license. So it's just that base license. It's not the additional licenses that we charge $1 on. And that revenue then again goes into marketing, education, and outreach through an organized campaign that we oversee. And the goals of this are to increase the understanding of Michiganders of the importance of hunting and fishing and how it contributes to wildlife management, provides funding for different conservation work, contributes to the economy, and is part of our state's cultural heritage. And with that, that's my part. That's the short part. Now the fun part, I'll turn it over to Nick.
Question.
Yep.
Does the public recognize the $1 from the base license that goes to your group? And is that the only funding source?
Yes, so it's that $1 from the base license and $1 from the fishing license. That is the only funding source.
I'm not sure that the public in general recognizes that $1 from each goes to this effort, and I think it's vitally important. So putting something together in a public type forum, and I recognize that costs money too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, knowing where the funding sources come from, I think is quite important.
Okay.
Cool. You guys hear me okay? Thanks, Jason. Like Jason said, my name is Nick Petruccia. I'm here on behalf of Fusion 92, which is the marketing and advertising agency of record that supports Michigan Wildlife Council. Over the next several slides, I'll be sharing a high-level overview of the work we've been doing with the council, specifically the public education campaign work under Protecting Michigan's Legacy. The goal for today is pretty simple. I'm going to try to give you a clear snapshot of the why, the who, and the how behind this work, what we're trying to accomplish, who we're talking to, and how we're building communications that will resonate with our target audience. And before I get into the work, I'm going to touch on a little bit of just about our process at Fusion 92 with the council. One thing that has been core to our partnership throughout the entire process is that it's infused with research. So we're not just guessing on what will land. We inform, we ensure communications will resonate, and then we measure and optimize to ensure that we're delivering on what we said we were going to deliver. We're informed by also multiple inputs. We use existing research, syndicated studies, database sources, as well as stakeholder interviews. And then we also validate creative through focus groups and in-market learning. We also track performance along the way through ongoing measurement, which you'll see towards the end of the deck. And all of this research that we pulled together, that helps define our target audience for the campaign. The core audience we're looking to target are adults 18 to 44 living in cities and suburbs who do not hunt or fish. This is roughly 1.5 million people. From there, we think about extended reach. So those are city and suburb outdoor enthusiasts. We consider those people low-hanging fruit with a similar age range, and that equals just over 600K. And then we acknowledge also a patron audience of hunters, anglers, and trappers. These folks are not our target audience for the campaign because we understand that they already know the value of hunting and fishing in Michigan. So the heart of it is people who may benefit from conservation outcomes, but don't naturally see hunting and fishing as for them. Additionally, we also did focus groups to help determine what message would resonate best with this audience. A couple key findings is that among the target audience, hunting and fishing is typically considered out of sight, out of mind, with very little perceived benefit and also perceived as something other people do with limited personal or statewide relevance. So we know that our communications have to share more than just facts. We need to build relevance and meaning. Another powerful insight is that when people learn the scale of financial contribution, it tends to surprise them. And that surprise sparks curiosity and motivates them to learn more or click through to learn more on our website. This is where we can help shift perception from hunting and fishing as a personal hobby to hunting and fishing as a public good in the state of Michigan. Now we'll move into a little bit more about the new campaign. The campaign message ties back to a concrete reality that license fees from hunting and fishing contribute over $63 million to Michigan wildlife conservation. And the people participating in these activities in many ways are quiet conservationists. The creative strategy is to make outcomes visible. That's monitoring populations, maintaining balance in nature, and protecting Michigan's legacy. This is so that the broader public can see what's happening behind the scenes. Now I'll get to the fun part, which is walking through the actual campaign creative. Oh, here we go. The first three videos that I'm sharing are 15-second spots that are activated on OTT or streaming video. So think about Hulu, Tubi, other streaming platforms. Once again, all targeted towards that 18 to 44 adult audience. Another thing to note about the campaign is we wanted it to stand out in a sea of very like poppy, colorful, noise filled ads. We wanted to take people into nature. As well as while we were casting for the campaign, an important piece was that we use real hunters and anglers because we wanted the actions and what they were doing to feel super authentic. And then we have some additional campaign creative that I'll walk through. This is our out of home or our billboard creative. Once again, using similar copy and messaging in the areas that are mentioned below, Grand Rapids, Lansing, Detroit. This is where our target audience lives and works. We also wanted to hit areas like Flint and Saginaw, where a lot of our target audience would be driving potentially up north, or, to games or, traveling with their children, and making sure that they're seeing that message in those areas as well. We have some additional, this is our paid social. So this would have been activated on Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, as well as Snapchat. Once again, meeting that target audience where they're consuming. Some of these are static, which would just be, an image. Others animated into videos. Once again, really trying to, capture the target audience's attention in a very different way, using the sounds of nature and really just trying to put them in that place. I'll play one more for you. And then in addition to what we call paid media support, we also support the council with organic social. This is social media posts that are pushed out on Facebook and Instagram to the audience that already follows their pages. And we have 5 content themes that all of the creative ladders up to. So conservation action, this is meant to showcase the real world efforts and successes in preserving Michigan's wildlife and natural habitats. Impact of outdoor recreation, which is meant to really elevate the role of recreation, especially hunting and fishing in Michigan's economy and culture. Conservation education and awareness to inform and inspire the public about wildlife management, conservation science, and responsible recreation. Community connection and engagement, activate Michigan residents as allies and participation in conservation efforts, and then funding and policy transparency, which is really to build public trust and understanding around the mechanisms that sustain conservation efforts. And then these are just a couple examples that fit into those content themes. I won't read through all the post copy, but this is just supposed to give you a snapshot of some of the work we've done on the organic channels. So once again, education awareness, just speaking about deer overpopulation. Community connection and engagement, we did a volunteer profile. And then funding and policy transparency, just speaking to, protecting wildlife with clear funding that you can trust. And then lastly, to round out this section, we do have a partnership, or the council has a partnership with Mike Avery Outdoors, and they've had a long-standing relationship with Mike Avery. So we frequently have Mike Avery reach out and have council members speak on his show, and just highlight what the council's been doing, anything about the new campaign, and also speaking to where we kind of go from here. We also had a 30-second radio spot that ran starting this past fall on the channel. All right, shifting gears just a bit, just to speak to the results of the campaign that launched this past fall and relaunched in March. This gives you a high-level overview of how the campaign performed in market, speaking to the paid media. A lot of this is kind of marketing speak, so I'm not going to get too in the weeds of this table, but we did perform above industry benchmark across all key channels, with a couple highlights here that OLV delivered the lowest cost per completed view. So that would be how much it costs to get someone to watch the entire video on that platform. And then also on OTT or streaming video, returning the highest video completion rate, meaning that they watched that entire 15-second ad, did not move over to another channel or skip through. So very happy with how the campaign has performed thus far. And then shifting into also another way that we measure success with the council is through third-party survey research. So we actually use a company called Responsive Management, who the council has been working with for the last several years, to help measure effectiveness of marketing, specifically among those who saw our message, those who make up that target audience that I spoke about in the beginning of the presentation. So I will quickly roll through these. One of the key outcomes to call out here is we're tracking baseline sentiment. So do people generally approve or disapprove of legal regulated hunting? And among our target audience, the group that saw the message reported higher approval. That's 79% compared to 64% among that did not see that message. So the takeaway here is that it isn't that a single message solves perception, rather message exposure over time is moving the needle in a positive direction. And then moving on, related to trust, we also had Responsive Management ask how credible the Michigan Wildlife Council is as a source of information about Michigan wildlife and outdoor recreation. Credibility was higher among those who saw the message, 73% versus 67% among those who did not. We feel like this is important because for education campaigns specifically, credibility is what makes people want to listen before they're willing to actually learn or engage. We also tested understanding of hunting's role as a management tool. Again, we see a lift, 78% agreement among those who saw the message versus 65% among those who did not. So we're not only improving sentiment, we're improving comprehension of why regulated hunting exists in the system. And then lastly here, we asked the broader question, the broader so what question of to what extent do people think hunting benefits Michigan at all? Those who saw the message reported higher belief in benefit, 81% versus 64% among those who did not. So when we talk about high level impact, this is the kind of proof point that shows the work is doing what it's supposed to do. It's connecting the activity to statewide benefit. I promise I'm almost done. Moving forward, just looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, the approach is really about kind of maintaining that momentum and being disciplined about what we scale. So we resumed media in March as originally planned to keep continuity with the campaign and make sure that our audience is continuing to see our message. Then we looked at channel selection. So we continue to run on the top performing channels. And then also within those channels, we move into optimized mode, analyzing performance, making any refinements based on audience, campaign type, creative, and other levers. And third, we reserve room for expansion and test opportunities. So we're not just repeating what we did last year. but thoughtfully exploring new areas where we could expand or break into new channels, like we're testing TikTok this year, for example. Okay, that all leads into the next evolution of the campaign. So we're calling this 2.0 because we're in the midst of creative development right now. The core insight, we feel like, overall, I want to start with overall, the goal of the new campaign remains the same: to increase understanding of the benefits of hunting and fishing in Michigan. We know that that is the ultimate goal. But we do know that, you know, this year might even feel a little bit different than last year when we were planning and developing creative. People are overwhelmed by a number of different things, like economics, technology, uncertainty, and we know that nature, specifically for our target audience, provides an escape, grounding, reconnection. We also know that Michigan outdoors are one of the few things that still feel shared, unifying, and authentic. So we want the next iteration of our campaign to really ring true to that and take people once again into that space and help them understand the benefits of hunting and fishing in Michigan. And that's my presentation. Thank you again for the time today. We're happy to answer any questions now, or we will also be meeting, like Jason said, at 2 o'clock today to review the next round of campaign creative. So we'd love for anyone to show up to provide their feedback. Thank you.
Do either of you hunt or fish?
I do, yes.
What for?
Pretty much everything. Mainly a deer hunter. I also fish. I go on the Detroit River, fish for walleye, go up north to Manistee River, steelheading. My dad is a huge outdoorsman. So for me personally, when I got assigned to work on the Michigan Wildlife account, it was pretty cool that I could take something that was considered like a passion or a hobby and turn it into some actionable work, which is pretty special.
Thank you.
All right, so fish for what I can, maybe not well. I mean,
Often,
not as often as I'd like, right?
nobody does.
I'm mainly a waterfowler, but I also deer hunt. And on the wildlife side, I actually have a PhD in wildlife science. So,
Thank you.
been around.
Can you give us some numbers on your budget, like last year, this year? And is it increasing or steady, or what are we dealing with?
Yes, actually, I will flip back to this slide. This is actually a snapshot specifically to media dollars. So this is a snapshot of our media budget. There is some additional budget that's dedicated to agency services and some other out-of-pocket costs that go into like producing what we just showed. But this is a pretty good snapshot of where kind of the money is going in terms of how we pay for the campaign itself. So a big bulk of that is in social media and streaming video, knowing that that's where our target audience is consuming a lot of their media. But then we also capture, you know, like I said, we have the partnership with Mike Avery to make sure that we're still hitting that audience. And then you'll see out of home and YouTube kind of rounding out that budget at the bottom there with a little bit less investment, but knowing that it's still important to making sure that we're getting that message across. But I could also share more information on the budget as a follow-up if that's of interest. I just don't have it in this deck specifically. I don't want to riff numbers.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
It's roughly 1.1 million though, right? Total, is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yep.
1.4.
This year.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, good.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? How can we help you?
I think just getting the word out, supporting us. We're doing a good job, I think. Nick's numbers, the numbers from when I first saw our data from 2015 to today are quite amazing. When we look at our national standards, we're exceeding national levels as far as support for hunting and fishing. So just give us a shout out here and there and we'll keep doing our job.
All right, we'll greatly appreciate it. And I do know legislators are also aware of it and talk about it at Sportsman's Caucus on a regular basis. So great program and great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, guys. Next, we have Fish Cat. This is one of our new initiatives, and we have Dr. Seth Herbst, Marcy Wardell, and then looks like Randy's going to come along as well, the fisheries chief.
Is this better? All right, fantastic. Chair Humphreys, commissioners, welcome. I just want to preface this presentation with a couple comments, and it ties in well with Wildlife Council's presentation because you're going to hear today about communication and effective communication from Fish Division. I want to preface it by introducing, I know Dr. Herbst has been here before. He was our ASRA unit manager, now is in charge of our research section. And so I won't go into a lot of detail about Seth, but Marcy is relatively new to the division. So Marcy Wardell is our communication specialist for Fisheries Division. She joined us in 2024, and her previous experience is in digital marketing and communications, including marketing agencies, publishing, local land conservation. She holds a bachelor's degree in writing from Grand Valley State University and a master's in fine arts and creative writing from Western Kentucky University. When it comes to social media platforms and communications, I need help. And it's she's really shown, and hopefully you've seen it in terms of, your own social feeds. You'll see fishing stories, fishing messages, hit those feeds, and it's all because of her and putting a plug in for what we do as a division. So there was a chief only a little bit ago who said, do you know that you can actually post videos to YouTube? Yeah, so having an effective communication is important. It's not only important, it's defined as one of our strategic goals. So you have on your desk today a copy of our annual report from 2025, which follows our strategic plans. Our goals in our strategic plan are reported out in our annual report. I'm not going to go through every one of those goals today. You'll see in the report there are highlights of each one of those for us, whether it be goal number 1, healthy ecosystems and sustainable fisheries, a goal on strategic partnerships, a goal on assessment and support tools for management, and a goal on efficient division operations. But it's goal 2 that we're going to take a deep dive in, which is the effective communication, outreach, and education of what we do as a division and why it's important to managing the fisheries. So without any further ado, we're going to take a deep dive and turn it over to Marcy to start the presentation on communication.
Thank you, Randy. That was a very kind introduction. So good morning, commissioners. I'm Marcy Wardell. As Randy said, I'm the communication specialist for Fisheries Division, and I'm going to be presenting on communicating fisheries science with Beth Herbst, the research section manager for fisheries. So my role is to promote the work that the division does and to make constituents aware of the work being done on their behalf to protect and enhance Michigan's aquatic life for their benefit and for the future. We wanted to open this presentation with a quote that really captures the point of what we're trying to share, which is that nothing in science has any value to society if it's not communicated. Our scientific work isn't just theoretical, it has practical applications and implications for the management of Michigan's fisheries. In order for that work to be applied, we need to ensure the right people are aware of it. And who are those people? There are many audiences with different interests and stakes in our work that we need to reach, as you can see here. We have natural resource professionals, sporting organizations, anglers, biologists, policymakers, and the general public for whom the resource is held in trust. In order to reach all of these different audiences, we need to be strategic about communicating across various media and platforms in ways that speak to the needs of those audiences. Those range from conference presentations and scientific journal articles to social posts and even face-to-face interactions, or some combination of these different means. So how do we do that? One of the ways is traditional media. Even in our increasingly digital media landscape, traditional media is still relevant. TV, radio, newspapers. And while you might say that everyone gets their news from social media, and we will get to that, that news originates somewhere. And it's often articles from news outlets, newspaper, television news that are also being published and shared online. So when we want to share something timely with the public, such as the results of our steelhead egg take this spring, or an opportunity for anglers to participate in citizen science like the Midwest Walleye Challenge, we put out a press release. That goes out to media who turn it into news stories. And it also goes out to our email subscribers. It's several 100,000 people, both anglers who have purchased fishing licenses, but also other interested people who have just signed up for updates on Michigan's fisheries. And some example of that is here. You'll see a press release with some news clips in various forms, right? Covered on the Mike Avery Show, covered by various outlets, local and statewide. We also use Showcasing the DNR Stories, which is a series of long form magazine feature style pieces that take readers behind the scenes into the work that the DNR does. In Fisheries Division, we use these pieces as an opportunity to translate research for an audience with a general interest in nature outside of just our traditional audience of hunters and anglers. The story shown here on the screen is on the restoration of spawning reef habitat in Saginaw Bay. And that story dug into the science that informed the project. So it let people know why the project was important, why it should matter to them, and also the continuing work we're going to do to monitor this reef and how we might learn from this restoration project. As you can see from the clips also on the screen, these showcasing stories often garner additional press and local, statewide, and sometimes even national outlets. As teased earlier, we are also leveraging social media. The DNR has a dedicated social media staff who manage the DNR's profiles across various platforms, tailoring messages to each space. Fisheries Division provides content to the social media team, whether that's fun facts and photos for Fish ID Identify Day posts, or more in-depth information on our survey work. Like you'll see here with this Lake St. Clair Surgeon set line survey photos in the posts there, or if it's opportunities for citizen science or soliciting participants for angling research, such as the Burbot study featured there that we partnered with Michigan Tech on. So social media, this is a great tool for boosting our other content as well. So our showcasing stories, our press releases, any work we're doing. And it's also great for reaching constituents directly, answering their questions or comments via DMs, and providing good customer service and building that relationship. Tyler Zarnopoulos is the DNR's social media public engagement specialist, and he's over there right now, and can answer some of your questions about those platforms. And if you've spent any time on social media recently, you know that video is a popular and compelling format. We're using video to reach people where they are and to use to our advantage the highly visual nature of the medium, both because of the highly visual nature of our work and the often beautiful settings it's conducted in. And we use that to help connect viewers with the resource. So that can be working with the video team and social media team over there to create short form explainer videos, like how to identify fish species, or explaining about Great Lakes reefs, as well as longer documentary style pieces that demonstrate how we conduct research and the value to constituents. So a good recent example of this is the Klondike Reef Expedition documentary that's linked here, and the largest image on the screen, that follows the RV Lake Char and crew out of Marquette on an expedition to a very remote part of Lake Superior to survey lake trout, which is an important species. And it really gives people a behind the scenes view in a really engaging way. And we saw a really great response from the public to this video. Another thing we're doing is encouraging our staff to provide guest articles, communicating on our scientific work to various publications. These are often outdoors focused outlets or industry publications that user groups that are highly engaged in fishing, often a very specific kind of fishing, follow. So pieces like the example pictured, which is an article for Bassmaster showing how pro anglers partner with the DNR on research, can allow us to share specific messages that are relevant to those user groups. And these pieces are written by subject matter experts, our biologists, and it helps build not only their individual credibility, but the agency's credibility with these stakeholders and stakeholder groups. So I'm going to let Seth take over to talk about peer-reviewed professional articles.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcy. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to come to talk about science communication today. Hopefully you noticed that we're absolutely leaning into, similar to the importance of diversification in investments, we're absolutely leaning into diversification in communications. And it is because we have a very diverse audience. Marcy did a great job of kind of talking through some of the more modern and contemporary approaches that we're using to science communication. As a program lead that oversees our Great Lakes monitoring and some of our inland research work, we've used the kind of more traditional peer-reviewed articles as an approach that comes with a lot of scientific rigor and credibility. Peer-reviewed articles is one of the approaches that we use to communicate our science, share our science with the professional community. For those of you that haven't read a peer-reviewed article, sometimes they can be a little dense and written in a format that most aren't used to. So, you know, Marcy talked really well about some of the other strategies, but we also conduct a lot of science that really helps advance the knowledge in fisheries science. So we take two different avenues or two different approaches for peer-reviewed articles. And one of the approaches is professional journals. So for us in fisheries science, the American Fisheries Society has a set of journals. A lot of our research scientists publish in those journals. It's available to folks that have access to libraries or special accounts or subscriptions to these different professional societies. The other approach that we use is an internal peer-reviewed process. And I'm mentioning that because we have a new tool that we wanted to come to highlight today, and that is the Fisheries Division's online library catalog. So the internal peer-reviewed publication process that has been ongoing in the division for several decades just became a little more modern in the last couple of years. So we have our division's librarian, Tina Tincher. She's responsible for managing our library resources that are roughly 10,000 different pieces of literature, as you can imagine, down at the Institute for Fisheries Research in Ann Arbor. That's a lot to manage. Some of the publications date back to 1930, so nearly 100 years old. And recently, we developed an online catalog to help increase the visibility and access to many of those library resources. So this new library is called FishCat. You can see a screenshot there. The URL is also available for those that aren't quickly jotting down the URL. I just recommend a Google search of Michigan DNR Fisheries Division library. That'll bring you to this resource here. But I want to point out Tina's efforts because for quite some time, these resources were available at, a request, or you'd have to send a note to Tina. She'd send it to you either email or snail mail. And really, as a division, we needed to, become more modern and make our resources more available and kind of align with other online resources that are out there. So she went through, cataloged everything into a database that then populates this tool, and I will walk through it for you right now. So FishCat, as you can see, has a lot of very similar functions that you would see with other library catalogs. Just pointing out the search boxes with several of the more common terms: author, subject, title, etc. But we also have the enhanced search option there. The other thing that we added to the online catalog is the bulletin board. This is something that provides direct access not only to our staff but other users for some of the more commonly used websites within our fisheries field, especially if you're interested in learning more about what we do as a division or some of the fishery science work that's facilitated by the American Fisheries Society. Certainly Google Scholar can provide you with a lot of library resources as well. So this is the landing page. The next thing is the visual search. I'll point this out. Again, we have roughly 3,000 different PDFs available in this online catalog. That's a lot of science and nearly 100 years of science. And I know that some of you are familiar with some of the resources and work that Fisheries Division does. Some of the early work that was done at Hunt Creek that is still very foundational for how we manage our trout populations came from research that was conducted and is published and accessible via this online catalog. The other thing that I'll point out, recognizing that you're legislatively mandated to make decisions based on sound science. A lot of the sound science is available in this catalog. Our status of the fisheries reports are reports that are created by our management biologists and highlight current findings from survey work, provide recommendations and interpretations of some of those surveys. So it might be relevant to some of the regulation conversations that you'll be having in the upcoming months related to fisheries work. So wanted to point out just a few of those. You can see the icons there, the buttons, direct access to any of those different report series. As you can imagine, over the course of roughly 100 years, there's been a few different series that we've leaned into, and they're all right there. So I know, just as an example to walk you through how to use this, I know everybody's familiar with Chief Claremont, so I used him as an example. He does have contributions that are published within this online catalog. So just to highlight the enhanced search, we have the operators there again that are, most common in a lot of different online library catalogs, but the ability to combine terms and have several criteria to get you to where you want. So just as an example, Claremont is the author, date of publication 2025, title Lake Huron. And that gets you to this record, which is the Lake Huron Salmon and Trout Management Plan. This is something that Randy created obviously as a product of a lot of stakeholder involvement and other involvement from staff. But just to highlight what the site looks like and point out that kind of yellow orangish rectangle there, click here to view the PDF. And all of the work that Tina did over the course of the last couple of years led to the ability to click that link and have the PDF directly accessible to the users. So there's one example there. Again, just highlighting the PDF, and as soon as you have access to that PDF, you can read it, save it, print it, share it with others, but you'll have full access to that information. So I did want to highlight that, recognizing that it is a resource, and I'm sure it's a resource that you all will be interested in. So to the commissioners, if you have any questions on FishCat or really any of the science that research section or the division is doing, I'm a resource. Obviously, Randy, Marcy are resources to address any of your questions as well. The other thing that I just want to do a selfish plug, it's an exciting time for research section within Fisheries Division. For roughly 60 years, we had a research vessel on Lake Michigan operating, conducting the science, doing a lot of survey work that led to a lot of very applied decision-making for Lake Michigan's fisheries and aquatic resources. We were very fortunate in FY23 to get a legislative appropriation to replace that vessel. That vessel is just about completed. It was built by Moran Ironworks up in Onaway, and we're going to be celebrating that new vessel with a christening ceremony on June 25th, and you're all invited to that. So wanted to take the time there to just kind of plug that event and make sure you were all aware. And that said, be happy to address any questions that you have on FishCat or other science communications that we do as a division.
Where will this event take place?
It'll be in Charlevoix, and we'd be happy to provide any of the details on logistics as a follow-up.
Please do. Thank you.
Yep.
The other question that I had is, how does the public learn about or access FishCat? How do they Google that? What do they do?
So the URL is there. My quick recommendation would just be go to any search box, Michigan DNR Fisheries Library, and you'll be able to find the hyperlink to FishCat.
Thank you.
Of course.
To respond to that question as well, a lot of the work that we're doing, like in our showcasing stories, is talking about projects that are related to publications there. We're often linking back to them. So they're being shared with the public via those means as well.
So I just Googled FishCat and fishcat.org came up, which is not what we're talking about. It is some other reference to other fisheries information. So
Yes.
don't just Google FishCat.
Agreed. Michigan DNR should be included in that search.
Thank you.
Of course.
I applaud your efforts to get research efforts on, available electronically. Michigan has led the way in a lot of research, both in fisheries and wildlife, and unless we get it available electronically, we lose that knowledge base, and it's foundational to a lot of the work. I also applaud the efforts to move your communication into, how should I put this? A more user-friendly format. I mean, when I went to work for nonprofit work, it was communications were so different in terms of connection, brevity, conciseness, and fun, quite frankly. And I think the better job we do of that as an agency, the better place we'll be with our publics and understanding it and actually listening and reading it and remembering what we're doing. So bravo. Any other?
Marcy, do you fish?
I have fished. I'm not an avid angler, which I think gives me a unique perspective in the division to speak to some of our non-angler stakeholders.
You're going to do it more?
I have my fishing license.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say, I appreciate the comment and the communication. We'll continue to work hard at it. Any follow-up questions you might have, let me know. And no, I did not publish that 1930 article, in case you were wondering.
Oh, shoot.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
Great work.
All right. Last but not least, of course, we're going to have Chad Stewart come up and give an update on our scientific deer management resolution. We're going to give monthly updates on this. If you all were here during deer regulations, that resolution was passed and we are working really hard on that. Sarah Thompson is under the weather today, so Keith is also up here, the assistant chief for wildlife.
Thank you, Deputy Director Lott. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Counselor. As Deputy Lott mentioned, just two short updates. First one being with our DEER program review and the work that we've accomplished thus far since the last meeting. We have had initial discussions with Wildlife Management Institute, or WMI, for a program review. WMI has conducted these reviews previously for other states and has identified a team and a outline timeline for when and how this review will take place. We've also determined the grant appropriations and process moving forward for an agreement. Now, additional work is needed, but we anticipate a formalized agreement to occur sometime in July or August and can report back with more details at that time. So I will pause there if there are any questions before moving on to the Earn a Second Buck update.
Chad, I would just commend the department for moving as fast as what you have on this. I know I greatly appreciate it. I view this as essential to the commission moving forward and able to carry out our duties. So just thank you to the entire department for moving quickly on this.
Appreciate that, Commissioner Fewens. All right, moving forward, update on the progress for our Earn a Second Buck pilot, which was requested at the May meeting. Staff are finalizing recommendations to propose an Earn a Second Buck pilot to the commission that will be brought forward in July, with an expected final commission action to occur in August. Now, this might seem like a very quick timeline, but that timeline is based on a 6-month development window that will be required for our programming updates to our harvest reporting and retail sales system to make sure that everything is ready ahead of the license sales for 2027, which begins in March. Since the last commission meeting, when the resolution was passed, staff have been working to identify the locations where the pilot regulation would occur, as well as determining the license structure to accommodate the regulation. The project evaluation design is predicated on a previous regulatory study using treatment and control pairings for deer management. Staff have also spent time identifying metrics that can be used to gauge the impacts of the Earn a Second Buck pilot on antlerless harvest, while accounting for the effects of the additional 2027 regulation changes that were already passed in May. And finally, staff are also working on approaches to address potential false reporting of antlerless deer harvest in Earn a Second Buck pilot areas. We're addressing this from both a deterrence and enforcement for false reporting, as well as developing methods for data correction to ensure harvest reporting will be reliable for comparing harvest results across the state. So with that, I will pause and ask if there are any questions.
From my lens, the accuracy is everything. For me, looking at data, the importance of having accurate data and the danger of having what we refer to as ghost does reported, it's everything. So we got to make sure that however we construct this, that we're getting as accurate information as possible. Otherwise, the data is useless. And I think we all understand that. So I just want to emphasize that. Besides the impact on doe density, are we looking at the impact on CWD that this could have?
That is one of the many metrics that we'll look at. Obviously, there's going to be some limitations based on where the pilot areas are included. So some counties may not have had chronic wasting disease identified yet. Some might have a small amount previously identified. So a lot will be determined based on some of the surveillance history that we have existing in those counties, the number of positives that we've had, and certainly we'll be focusing on really the harvest change over time. And that obviously has the potential to be put into multiple models that are already established that we can look to evaluate potential forward impacts of that regulation on the disease.
The ability to have, I think, in my opinion, 2 data sets, with 1 buck regulation and Lower Michigan, along with this pilot is critical. I think there's a lot to be gained from having these multiple data sets. So I appreciate, once again, the department moving as quick as what you have on this.
Any other, Commissioner Easter?
Just curious what criteria you're using to develop the geographical range of the project test areas, and generally, have you included how much of the state's going to be covered to this earn a second buck?
Yeah, we're
Test.
close. Sorry, we're close to finalizing what that looks like. That should be done here in the next day or two. But ultimately, we're looking at multiple paired counties. I believe the resolution primarily stated Zone 3. So we are focusing largely in the southern half of Michigan. And the general frame is based off of some of the previous APR evaluations that we had. So we have these paired townships in those previous townships in that study. We're looking at county level implementation with this current design. So the July meeting where Dr. Rudolph and Dr. Eder, who's our research specialist, will be fairly comprehensive in terms of outlining how those pairings took place, what we're looking at, and what went into that decision-making process.
Just from my standpoint, it seems like, and I don't know how big of a project you guys are looking at, but for me, it needs to be substantial. So that you can actually generate some real data from it. And I mean, if it seems like if it's too small, if it's not aggressive enough, that you're going to have limited data that really won't tell you much. And that's really important to see how this is going to work, is that it be a fairly substantial area. And I assume that when you say pairing, you're trying to take like counties, for instance.
Correct.
Have similar characteristics and compare them against each other.
Correct. Yeah. We're looking at right now a tentative proposal of 5 paired counties. So there would be a treatment applied to 5 counties, which our staff has determined would be sufficient to determine what the impact of that regulation would look like.
But we haven't heard your presentation yet, but that seems like that's tending towards the smaller side. I don't know how many counties we have eligible for that in the Zone 3, but 5 seems not overly aggressive, but I guess we'll see what the Senate report. Thanks. That's just my first impression.
Understood.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Commissioner
Chad,
Burke.
can you give us a little insight on registering the dough harvest? Is it going to be in person at a check station, or are you going to rely just on technology?
We're focused on a process that, if this regulation would ultimately be successful or desirable to move forward in the future, something that we can maintain, or expand, across a broader area. So with that, we're really leaning in towards the technology side of things, because of the capacity to, then the limitations to conduct an in-person verification process. So short answer is we're looking more on the technology side of things.
And I recall some data on ghostos from, I know this is a dangerous topic, other states, but can you recall from Virginia the prominence of ghostos that they assumed in their earn a second buck when they had that policy?
I know the presentation you're talking about. I don't have that metric committed to memory. So with that, I'd hate to guess at it in a public forum.
Maybe for July then, when
We can
back up here. Okay.
certainly include that in a July update. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Fewens.
I understand relying on that technology. I think at least for the pilot, if we're not doing mandatory check-in, it really concerns me about the ability to scam the system. I mean, once again, we got to have accurate data. And if we can't get that, then it's worthless. The whole effort is in vain, really. So I would just really emphasize, at least for the pilot, we try, and I know it's intensive on the staff and there's a cost associated with it. I get that. But I really believe that we got to have some type of mandatory check-in. Otherwise, I don't know that I have confidence in the accuracy of what the data that we're going to get out of it.
Understood, Commissioner. I'm confident we will be able to prepare to discuss this fully at the July meeting once the entirety of the project, including all the context that went into the development, is able to be brought forward.
I just applaud the division getting going. I mean, I had calls with Sarah, the chief, I think the Monday after our last commission meeting, and you guys were already working on, maybe it was that Friday, actually, now that I think about it. So it was very early on, so I appreciate your efforts to get together both on the program review for DEER, but also this pilot study. So, and I know it's complicated, and I know you're working on how to present the information. So we'll stand by and look forward to hear that presentation next month.
Thank you, Chair Humphreys.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, guys. I just wanted to add that they have been working really, really hard on this. And I also met with the head of Wildlife Management Institute, WMI, Tony Wasley, who is a former state director out of Nevada, who was a recovering deer biologist like Chad. So he has a ton of background on this, and they have a great crew that is looking at this. So I'm pretty excited about it, actually. It's going to show us what data we have, what data we may need, and what we don't have. I will tell you, Michigan is a leader in the nation, and we have the longest standing deer harvest reporting survey in the country. And there is a lot, we do have quite a bit more data than other states, and other states look to us for that. So I am excited to see what they're going to come up with here. And I've asked them to come to Michigan and do an introductory meet and greet with our staff so that they can know each other personally. We know these folks at WMI, but not all of our staff do. So I think they'll be doing that hopefully in August here, and we'll go from there. That concludes Director Report.
All right, there is a legislative report in our packet, so I encourage the commissioners to review that. There's a lot going on legislatively in some arenas and not much in others. So, but I think it's important that we stay tuned with it. With that, we'll move into public appearances as Brooke is coming up here to go over the public appearance guidelines for us. Commissioner Eyster would like to say a few words.
Thank you. I wanted to address some comments that I made at the last commission meeting. Towards the end of the meeting, it was a long day. For all of you that were here and for the people that were listening online. And when we were discussing the limited firearm amendment, I made some comments about hunters in southern Michigan that I was called out on, rightfully. And they were inappropriate comments I made. And they were derogatory in terms of questioning the ability of southern Michigan hunters. That is something that I've thought about, tried to figure out where those comments came from. It was, again, a long day. I had just been released from the hospital from having a stroke. I'd been 12 days in the hospital. And I was physically and mentally drained. But I don't want to sound like the drunk guy who said a bunch of bad things and then they woke up the next day and said, well, that's not really me. So, which is kind of what it sounds like. But I will say that in the nearly 50 years of deer hunting that I've engaged in, I have run into some incidences. These are personal incidences. I've had a friend of mine who took a number of incoming shots from a hunter on a neighboring property that were coming through a tree that he had a deer stand in. I've you know, over the years with increased pressure and smaller lot sizes in the area where I hunt, there's been some minor conflicts with new hunters in the area about boundary lines and property rights. And I've also had situations in which I was out hunting one time and there was a storm front coming through, and, you know, I had to sort of rescued another hunter. I kind of helped him get himself back on the road and out of the woods, or on the road. Wasn't aware of the weather, got himself in trouble. But in more recent years, I've had deer stands that have been put up on my personal property that I've had to remove. And kind of an annual event. I have an area where I go out to, I walk my dog on a city-owned piece of property. It's become a dumping ground for harvested deer. And I find that out because my dog gets them every year. And that same piece of property, this is a property that hunting's not allowed on, it's city-owned. And I've actually found a deer blind hidden back in there. So I've had personal experiences, but the mistake I made was I conflated those personal experiences with deer hunters on a large, grand scale, and that was unwarranted. And I'm embarrassed by it, and I apologize for those statements. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go over the guidelines now.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that signed up before the end of the day last Friday, you have 5 minutes to give your comments today. For those of you that did not sign up and would like to provide comment today, you can fill out a card in the back. We'll give you 3 minutes to give your comments. When you have 1 minute left, I'll hold up the 1 minute sign. Then when your time is up, I'll hold up the time please sign, and we ask that you please bring your comments to a close. And if you would please state your name for the record, we'd appreciate it.
All right, first up is Marcy.
The trajectory of decision, Marcy Terwilliger. The trajectory of decisions governing the fate of our wild ones is rocketing closer to a total abandonment of any regard for them as sentient, cognizant partners in existence with us on this life journey. I acknowledge that some people choose to kill their own food, but it's a far reach from your average venison seeker to the serial killing we're seeing by some against virtually all our wild ones. That's not hyperbole. As one trapping proponent recently referred to the gratuitous violent taking of wild lives, pay to play. There has to be a better way to fund than ending the lives that make the wild wonderful. I've spoken before of the urgent need for greater awareness of the escalating threats to our wild ones, on top of those created by our dated policy structure. For context here, documented serious outbreaks of canine distemper virus in 2025 have had disastrous effects on Yellowstone wolves, with only 17 pups surviving. That's the lowest since the 1990s, plummeting overall wolf numbers across the park to a 20-year low, with pup survival rates dropping to just 37%. Worse, it wasn't contained within Yellowstone. Wolf researchers went afield to test a sampling from the Northwest regions, expecting, based on historical patterns, to find around a 28% distemper positive rate. But the actual number was more than double that. Closer to home, we had the 1980s canine parvovirus striking Isle Royale's wolf population. It was introduced by a tourist dog, and it wiped out most of resident wolves, dropping their presence from 50 to just 14. The resulting imbalance let moose heavily damage the island's vegetation. Further calamity ensued as those 14 surviving wolves created a severely inbred population which couldn't naturally recover for over a decade. My point is, we don't know what the next catastrophe may be, nor when, but we're not totally ignorant on the possibility or probability either. Well, some of us aren't. In April, our federal government issued a memorandum of understanding between the U.S. Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management, and USDA. paving the way to reactivate use of deadly and indiscriminate, as all traps, M44 cyanide bombs across our public lands. Just look up the stats on non-target deaths. It's outrageous and sickening. On May 1st, the U.S. House introduced legislation to put it all in motion. 20 days later, Michigan House Republicans introduced House Bill 6008 to replicate Wisconsin's 2012 debacle of open season on wolves, in conjunction with bills to sever the upper from the lower peninsula for so-called management purposes. We see what's going on here. I dealt with the same toxicity in the 2000s when I would speak for our wolves in the Wolf Advisory Council meetings in the UP. How dare I have a say in what happens to wild ones in my own state? It stunk then and it reeks now. Public trust doctrine states that the natural resources of the state are held in trust for all citizens of the state. This faction's ongoing debasement of ethical stewardship isn't new. They've ignored the public's clear opposition to wolf hunting, and Republican Governor Snyder signed our wolves' death warrant in 2013, ushering in a senseless, unwarranted submission to those just itching to bag some of them wolves. And the exclusion thus far of any good faith outreach to first-tier stakeholders, our tribal citizens, sounds familiar. We have laws in Michigan protecting animals from abuse, but those are written to inexplicably become moot when the victims are wild ones. There's a lot of wrong here, but a lot of us are not inclined to be muted while our wild are picked off like targets in a carnival. Thank you.
Thank you. Thad Dickinson.
Deputy Director, Chair Humphreys, Commissioners, my name is Thad Dickinson. I'm a Michigander who cares deeply about responsible wildlife management and stewardship, which is why I'm here again to ask the Commission to finally act against wildlife killing contests. At a basic level, the issue of killing contests comes down to how we define ethical wildlife management. Most people, hunters and non-hunters alike, agree that wildlife should be treated with respect and managed thoughtfully. Killing contests, which reward people with prizes for killing as many animals as possible or bringing in the largest kills, don't reflect that shared value. Ethics matter not only for the treatment of wildlife, but also for maintaining the credibility of wildlife governance in Michigan. And the 50-plus killing contests in the state shift the focus away from ethical stewardship towards competition. That shift conflicts with the public trust doctrine, which holds that wildlife belongs to all Michiganders, not just hunters and trappers, and is managed by this commission on behalf of the public. By emphasizing the number of kills, prizes, and spectacle, killing contests undermine the public trust and raise legitimate concerns about whether management decisions by this commission are aligned with the broader trust as required of it, or just hunters and well-funded special interest groups in and outside the state of Michigan. Killing contests also raise significant concerns when you consider science-based wildlife management. Killing contests as an effective management tool aren't supported by the scientific evidence. In fact, there's not a single scholarly, peer-reviewed, or even marginally scientific study that finds killing contests to be an effective management tool. There's no bag limits, no quotas, no mandatory reporting, no data tracking, no protection of breeding populations, no accounting for climate stress, disease, habitat loss, and the ecological roles the animals play. Killing contests are simply free for all killing. Decades of peer-reviewed published research has repeatedly found that indiscriminate killing, especially of species like coyotes, which are the primary victims of killing contests, does not reliably reduce populations. Instead, the type of science that this commission is obligated by law to follow has repeatedly found that indiscriminate killing increases reproduction and disrupts natural social structures in ways that create more problems. Good wildlife management relies on targeted, evidence-based strategies with clear biological and ecological goals, not the generalized, incentivized slaughter of killing contests. The issues of ethics, public trust, and science-based management
also align with NRC policy 4104, which emphasizes, you guessed it, that wildlife decisions be guided by sound science, ethical practices, and public values. NRC policy 4104 commits this commission to opposing the payment of bounties on predatory animals and using and promoting sound scientific methods for predator management. Killing contests act as de facto bounties, and instead of supporting these bounties through continued silence and inaction, this commission should heed its own policies and work to end killing contests. Killing contests also conflict with Proposal G, which Michigan voters approved to ensure that wildlife management decisions are based on sound science and insulated from special interests or purely recreational purposes. Voters made it clear that decisions about wildlife must be informed by sound scientific principles, not with activities that lack clear biological and ecological purposes. Killing contests are not grounded in scientific management objectives. Instead, they're driven by competition, monetary incentives, and tradition, which puts them at odds with the framework Michigan voters chose to guide wildlife management. The North American model of wildlife conservation also stands in opposition to killing contests. It emphasizes that wildlife is a public resource, management should be science-based, and hunting should be conducted ethically under the principle of fair chase. Responsible hunting, as I've heard explained countless times in this forum, is about skill, respect, and purpose. Killing contests, on the other hand, promote a mindset that's focused on volume and reward. They're antithetical to the North American model of wildlife conservation and inconsistent with the longstanding ethical standards it promotes. Similarly, the Boone and Crockett Club, one of the oldest and most respected conservation organizations in North America, has publicly opposed killing contests. Its position reflects a deep-rooted conservation ethic and reinforces the fact that opposing killing contests is not about opposing hunting, but about upholding ethical and conservation-minded hunting practices. Ethical regulated hunting plays an important role in conservation, but killing contests are neither ethical nor regulated. They misrepresent the type of hunting that I want to believe most Michigan hunters practice. They undermine public support, and they weaken trust in the systems and bodies that manage wildlife, including this commission. So in light of what you've heard from the Wildlife Council about regulated hunting and credibility, I'm asking this commission to finally take this issue seriously, to demonstrate a clear commitment to ethical stewardship, science-based management, and the public trust by acting against a blood sport that is unequivocally incompatible with ethics, science, and Michigan's public values. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to address some of these concerns. This is a topic that's come up a couple different times, and it made me curious about it. And Thad had addressed 4104, and after deer regulations, I kind of had a chance to look into it. So I did take a look into it because I was curious to learn more and educate myself. What I had found out in also contacted the Attorney General's office for additional clarification is that bounties that the state, the government itself, would not participate in a bounty system. It's not private organizations. So I just want to make that distinction. And I'm not making a judgment on the ethics of it, but it's something that's come up repeatedly. And I just want to say that I took the time to look into it because I was curious and wanted to learn more. And that's what I had found out.
And I just applaud your willingness to do the research and also to respond to correspondence we had. Would that be? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bea Friedlander, and I represent Attorneys for Animals. Chair Humphreys, Commissioners, Deputy Director Lott, and Assistant Attorney General Gamble. I'm going to start today with a reading of excerpts from your policies. The introduction says, quote, Natural Resources Commission shall be responsible for Department of Natural Resources policy, which influences department priorities, methods of operations, or the manner in which programs relate to the citizens of the state of Michigan. All program units of a department affected by a proposed policy shall participate in the formulation of the policy. The second one is NRC Policy 4103. And although when you look it up, it says archives, as far as I can tell, it's still in effect. Quote, the control of live wild animals causing nuisance, depredation, or damage shall be accomplished with the welfare of the animal uppermost in mind, as well as the appropriate legal provisions, safety considerations, and public interest. And then it goes on. We're bringing these two policies to your attention. Ask that you review them carefully and challenge you to live up to them. Several months ago, you voted unanimously to approve the Fur Bear and Small Game Management Season's Wildlife Conservation Order Amendment. You requested the amendment, which is somewhat counter to another policy on how orders are to be presented, but quote, to bring regulations for the take of small game species and fur bearer species that are causing damage or a nuisance into compliance with commission authority. This change is being brought outside the regular regulation process and cycle in order to correct authority compliance, end quote. Ground squirrels and red squirrels are among the animals impacted. They now can be hunted and trapped during the newly created management season, building on the earlier categorizations of them as nuisances. There's a different way to look at these animals. Next January 21st commemorates, quote, National Squirrel Appreciation Day, end quote. Since 2001, this day has been recognized as a way to acknowledge the role of squirrels in nature and ecology. For example, they promote reforestation because sometimes they forget where they buried their nuts. This commission has the opportunity to look at species not simply as instrumentalities for human recreation or as nuisances to humans or as a resource, but as a species with value as individuals and part of the ecosystem. I have a little bit of time left, and I like to say two things. I mentioned this to Commissioner Buen. How do you put Buen? I'm sorry. Okay. You're taking on more and more authority. So I'd like to see that addressed to things like wildlife killing contests. Second thing, with regard to the discussion earlier on about the legislators, et cetera, I urge you all to look at the last 6 to 8 minutes of the House Natural Resources Committee hearing a couple of weeks ago on creating an Upper Peninsula Natural Resources Commission in response to a presentation from 2 members of the DNR. One of the representatives, and I'm paraphrasing here, but take a look at it, said something like, you're not a stakeholder, we make the rules and you follow them. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Brad Grimm.
Thank you, commissioners. You guys passed your last meeting, resolutions on deer hunting. We talked about opening up the rifle zone. And you made comments yourself about the rifle zone. Some of the comments are not wrong. In southern Michigan, where we live, we have 3, 4, 5 acre parcels. You put a guy with a 30-06 that'll shoot 2.8 miles. You trust that? Can you shoot long range? Has anybody on this commission shoot long range? Has anybody in this room shot long range? How many guys accurate in this room could shoot 500 yards? Not very many, is there? But you're going to put guys down here in zone 3 with high-powered rifles and not think about what you're doing? You put a 16-year-old kid that's going to see a buck halfway across the field with an odd 6. Don't think he's not going to take a chance and shoot it. You're putting a lot of lies online when you did that. And I'm sorry to say it, Mr. John, you were wrong. I have a picture right here. That's my blind. That went through my chair. That's over 300 yards off the line. If I'd have been in it, I'd have been dead. You need to rethink your policy on zone 3. And as far as the deer goes, please, I'm begging this commission, go to another buck. Don't take away guys' opportunities for $2. There's a group of this to say that want big bucks only. That's not what Michigan's about. We're about tradition. In the 80s, we had $4. We used to have $4. 600,000 hunters and less deer than we have now. Now you want to reduce us? You want to cut back what we shoot? What we harvest in this state? That's wrong. You want money? The DNR wants money? Well, I'm telling you right now, we've been calling our congressmen, our senators, and we're going to put pressure on. Because the DNR is not thinking about it. You want to raise our rates, raise our licenses, raise our fees, and then you want to cut back on what we have, what we do. Go to the policies, earn about, I'm all for it. That sounds like a great policy. But do it for the whole state. Don't just say, hey, we're going to try this right now. That's not going to work. Go back to taking $2, earn $1, take that dough, see how the harvest goes. We've had antler point restrictions in with our second license for how many years? Don't take away our deer hunting. And think about what you're doing when you guys talk about your rifle hunting. Please, if somebody gets killed, I'll be the first one to say, you guys will get sued. The commissioners will get sued because you guys passed it. And who's going to pay for it? All the people right here. The hunters and fishermen in Michigan are going to pay for it. I'm sorry, Mr. Walters. You are all for it. You're all for this rifle zone. You don't hunt in zone 3, do you? Do you hunt down here? John, do you hunt down here?
I'm not going to respond to you, but I appreciate your commitment to it. So thank you. We're going to agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree, you know, and I understand everybody's like, well, hunter safety. The last guy went behind me said I was an idiot. Hunter safety. Hunter safety is done online now. It's not like the old days where we had it in school. It's a different state. We need to monitor what we give out to people. I understand hunters are all responsible, supposed to be, but there's also excitement in the world. So please think about what you're doing before you do it. You pass this rule, somebody gets hurt, it's going to come back. And our deer hunting here, and please go back, change the rule back. You got guys out here that are weekend warriors that hunt 1-2 days. They're not going to go out here and get a 6 point. Can you guarantee a 6 point buck for everybody? Can you? Can anybody in the commission do it? You can't. But if they go out and get a 4 point or a spike, that's their buck. That's their trophies. Let them have what they want. Don't keep shoving it down their throats. Big bucks, bucks. And you spoke about out of state, using other states. We need to stop that right now. We are not Virginia. We're not Pennsylvania. We are Michigan. Use Michigan only data. Because you start using out of state, that's not the same as us. They're a whole different ecosystem than us. They're a whole different area than us. Pennsylvania, everything is different. Use Michigan data. I appreciate your time. I talked to some of the commissioners. I appreciate y'all what you're doing, but please think about what you got coming up. Because if somebody gets hurt, I feel bad for you. Because it's going to come down. It's going to come down hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Dorman? Saw you come in.
Well, I had to think long and hard to come up with something to yak about today that wasn't deer. I think you're ready for a little relief, maybe. So I'm going to bring up another controversial subject. Not so much to me, maybe to you. I'm going to try to educate you a little bit. We are going to be asking in the next go round of bear regulations to level the ground a little bit. We want to be able to start baiting the 1st of July for bears. And there's reasons for that. We keep slipping into the haves versus the have-nots. And I like to deal in reality. The people that got private land that want to shoot a bear, I'll guarantee you, they got a bait out right now already. Not everybody, but a high percentage of them. And we know that if we can bait, we can hold bears on public ground. You can do it. They'll stay on public ground. There's bears on public ground the first 2 weeks. Now, we've taken Shannon 3 times. If you take her the first week, or even the second week, we can find her a track. The third time, that's the only time she could get there. It was the 3rd week. I had to assemble an army of 15 trucks riding around from before daylight till about 10 in the morning before we could find one bear track in 100 square miles. Why is that? Well, the bears will stay where they're fed, and we know we can hold them there. But if you're being honest and you're being a good sportsman and following the rules, those bears, they just got to run a couple miles across the road where there's some private land that you know our DNR officers aren't able to go in and see anything about that or they'll be in trouble. And we just want to level that playing ground. Let us start feeding them on the 1st of July. That's 5 weeks before we can do it right now. Now, the argument from the department is, well, that's going to create problems with bears, with wolves killing dogs in the UP, because those wolves will eat the same bait like cookies and granola and everything, and they'll have their pups and they'll take over that area, and they will make sure that if any dogs come around there, they're going to eat them. And if you've ever seen what they do to a dog, they get a dog from here to the far corner of the parking lot. Before you can get there, it's eaten. It's terrible. It's just terrible. But we can avoid that. We have the ability. We are launching legislation to allow us to use barrels. We had them before, got them taken away, had them before, got them taken away. And we're talking about a steel barrel with a bolt on top, 3 1-inch holes. And if you wanted to make it, if you're going to bait early, and you got to use the steel barrel, and you can only bait with corn, because that's the department's other issue. We don't want to habituate them to human foods. Well, corn isn't a human food. And those bears will lay there and roll that barrel back and forth just all day long. You can have them on camera and watch them do it. 8 or 10 kernels will roll out, and they're just happier than a clam, and they'll do that all day long. So if you did it in that manner with the barrel, you'd eliminate the wolf-dog conflicts. Just in case you don't know, and you might not know, here in Michigan, I've been on the Wolf Advisory Committee since 2008, and the first thing I did said, we don't want to get paid if our dog gets killed by a wolf. Wisconsin, they pay it. Oh my goodness. So Wisconsin, they pay you. We'd rather have you go in and get that pack of wolves, because if there's 150 some packs of wolves, which roughly that's what they think there are, there's only 8 or 10 that kill dogs or livestock. So you take care of those, and that's worked really well when we could do it. Okay. Real quick. There's problems with some of the stuff you're doing, the department's doing with technology. We have a very large Amish community. They are big time hunters. They can't buy a gun in Michigan. It's illegal for an Amishman to buy a gun because he doesn't have a photo ID. And they sure as heck don't have cell phones. And if we go to, and we may have to do it because of cuts or whatever, but just let's not leave that proportion of our society out in the cold, not being able, because they hunt the way they hunt. So time, please. I made it. Any questions? No? I must have done a really good job. No question. Hey, have a nice day and thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Jim Myers.
Yes, good afternoon. The reason I'm here today is to try to bring forward to you guys what a $1 rule will do to the sporting goods small retailers in the state of Michigan. We survived, I've been at it for 34 years. We survived when vertical bows went to crossbows. When people bought vertical bows, they came and they bought sights, they bought releases, they bought things on a yearly basis plus new bows. Crossbows came along, wiped that right out. Basically, now you have a crossbow, we see you every 3 to 5 years for a set of string and cables, and maybe for a pack of broadheads and bolts. And then years go on, we wipe out the muzzleloading season. Go to modified firearms in southern Michigan. Well, that muzzleloader season, we counted on that as our third opening day. We had archery, firearms, and muzzleloading. We lost hundreds of pounds of powder, primers, bullets, guns, cleaning supplies, everything that you would need for that for a third season, which we kind of needed to have to survive. Well, that is gone. Now, if we go to $1, what is going to happen is we are going to go to a program where people are going to take their vacation. They're going to have to choose. Either it's going to be archery or it's going to be firearms. It's not going to be both because they may not have a tag for either one. So now once we prove it, we push them to firearms, they won't buy a lot of archery. Or if they go out the first part of archery season, they get their deer, they won't come back to buy firearms. So now you're putting us between a rock and a hard place because now we potentially could lose 50% of our business. Nobody can survive on a 50% loss. Earn a buck will help because now it'll give them an opportunity to get another buck so they will hunt both seasons. But also, I believe instead of this 3-day extended firearm season in December, let's go back to a 7-day primitive muzzleloader season where they have to go and come and buy things from the retailer so we can survive to pay taxes to the state of Michigan to help pay everybody's bills. Just my thoughts. Appreciate if you consider it as to either earn a buck for the whole entire southern Michigan or zone 3 versus zone 2. You know, I know it's not fair to them guys either because we're all taxpayers. We all own land. We all hunt on our land and prove it to do for deer hunting. I wish there was an easy way to deal with it, but there's not. You're between a rock and a hard place. I'm sitting between a rock and a hard place too because of the things that go on. So just consider that, you know, earn a buck, that would help. Or let's just go back to this and then put a shit off for 3 years and come back to it and get findings and studies and things. You know, we've done this electronic stuff for 3 years now consistently. And we should have enough information to say, hey, this county shoots this many bucks. This county shoots this many bucks. They're only shooting this many does. Give that county an incentive. Cut your doe permits back in price in Saginaw County to $10 instead of that to try and get people to shoot more deer. You know, when you at the end of the day, when you look at it, that spike horn is still 30% bigger than most of the does that are left walking around. So if you're looking at value for your license, you're going to take that antlered deer over that non-antlered deer. So you have to, and the processing places charge the same to process, whether it's a buck or it's a doe. There's no break. Whether it weighs 80 pounds, it weighs 180 pounds. There's no break. So let's try and get this figured out to where we can get more antlers, to get our numbers down, get our buck numbers up, and get things back in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Rochelle.
Hello again, commissioners, Chair Humphreys, Shannon, nice to see you guys again. First, I want to say thank you to all of you for your time and attention given. No matter the outcome, whether we agree or not, there have been thousands of emails and hundreds of phone calls, and that is no small feat to manage. Commissioner Fewens, you already came forward with the first step of many to address what my comments will be today, and I give my full support moving forward with that. But I still did want to say a few things about some of the act and the explanation given to me and to others as to why they were done that way. The biggest grievance is the combination of multiple changes into one vote in order to garner more votes on an item that was less than desired. This is 100% pure politics and does not belong in the decision-making process to protect and manage our natural resources. I personally cannot remember a voting meeting in which totally different amendments were combined like that, at least not for deer regulations. Amendments have been brought forth with item X and change number Y, and that is exactly how the order of procedure should be done. Each item should be voted on separately, stand on its own merit, and be passed or failed by the rest of the commission. I was told that that was how legislation was done, and it was a normal practice. Be that as it may for the legislature, which is a whole other issue, this commission is not the legislature. The NRC was delegated the authority it has under Prop G in order to protect decisions about natural resources from the quote-unquote normal legislative process. To defend or justify in any way, try to normalize the behavior flies in the face of Proposal G and we the people, let alone the trust that the trust with hunters. Your duty is to the resource, whether it is deer, bird, fish, land, or water, to protect it just like you did the dams and the land that went with them, and to support sound scientific management decisions that are defensible with data, not just pleas for opportunity and tradition. It is not justification to continue to do something just because we have been doing it for a while. A tree does not stay small forever. A forest changes over the years, and so should regulations. To quote one of the great founders of American conservation, Aldo Leopold, ethical behavior is doing the right thing when no one else is watching, even when doing the wrong thing is legal. If there must be policy made to make the wrong thing not an option, then make the policy change so that what happened cannot happen again. And as for the comparison to so-called trophy fishing and deer brought up by Commissioner Eyster, no one needs to go out of state for great fishing like they do for great deer hunting. Michigan is well known as one of the best fisheries in the nation. There are a lot of rules, size limits, bag limits, and method of take restrictions that have made Michigan a destination fishing state. Well, one example, the current situation of the walleye in Saginaw Bay, is a great example of being managed for quantity over quality. And the size of those fish is limited not by the habitat or the climate, nor because Michigan is not capable of growing larger, more desirable walleye. Maybe we could learn a thing or two from the fish. Thank you all.
All right, that concludes our 5-minute comments. We're into 3-minute comments, and first up is Kevin Johnson. For 5 minutes? Oh, okay.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank the department for especially Scott Eggman, as well as Assistant Chief Keith Kentai We're taking Representative Ken Bradstreet, previous one, Ken Borton, with us on a tour to the Black River Ranch.
Okay.
And we spent the whole morning together, and I know that you guys are familiar with Ken Borton's name. And so that was a great experience for both of us. And so your staff should be applauded for that, for making those arrangements. In a new DNR truck, by the way, that we did not scratch. I just had two things, basically. The Ernebuck is going to be interesting, and we spent a lot of time talking about that maybe that morning. As you know, that when you dropped the pin, when you first came out with that, those pins got dropped on the Capitol front steps many times, and people did not appreciate that, so you changed it to township. That was a good move. The Ernebuck is definitely going to be a challenge with honesty and resources. You already don't have the resources, so I think you've got a big challenge on your hand to hold people accountable for doing that. I don't agree with the Ernebuck, but I'm just stating some of the facts that I think you're going to have some challenges with. The next thing, so when I go back to Northern Michigan, and I'm well entrenched with Northern Michigan and the hunting industry, I mean, there's familiar faces here that we talk. And the thing that I get asked more than deer regulations is what's going on with baiting? When are you going to bring baiting back? When are you going to bring a common sense approach back to baiting, since 80% of the people up there that have taken surveys want it back? You talk about losing hunters. You know, I was on a conversation all the way down here with a fellow hunter that works for Wolverine Power. And he said that he doesn't, he doesn't plant the food plots that he used to. His kids, they're busy, and he's not hunting like he used to, and they've taken baiting away. And, you know, you're not introducing a lot of new hunters to it. If these kids don't see deer, they don't want to do it anymore. So if you could bring back a something similar to the UP and bring it down here, people are already doing it. I used to own 13 gas stations. I know all about how much bait we sell. And you're making good law-abiding citizens and the criminals. And another thing too is you can have licking branches out, and now that's how I survey my deer, is I have licking branches. And guess what? Those deer hit those licking branches all day, every day. They share saliva, they do it all. They're either going to do it on my licking branches or the ones that they make of their own. And I think that part of your budget issue has to do with recreational feeding and baiting from the person that I know. That's why he's in office. And so let's work on the baiting. And I just want to know, where are we at with the baiting issue? I mean, you know, I don't know if anybody can answer that. I mean, because that's what I get asked.
I intended to bring it up during my reports, but essentially I'll do it now since people are here and you're asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
We have asked the department to do a updated deer management plan, do the deer program review, but also do a deer management plan update and also include disease management. As you know, that disease plan is outdated. There's been a lot of research. There's been a lot of update.
Okay.
So we would like to get that information as part of it. I know that department has also been talking to researchers on this, and they plan to bring some information forward. But I would imagine we're probably going to be looking at next season before we tackle it.
Okay. Well, that's good. Then thank you.
All right, Dan.
I'm Dan Olfig. I represent the 11,000 sportsmen and women of the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters. Much calmer today. Could find a parking spot out there, huh? The passion, the commitment, the people taking off work, the 5 hours of public comment, that was spectacular to see. But the problem becomes, is it enough? I mean, we had some change. Becky, when I talked to you a couple of months ago, you told me it's very clear that hunters want change. Is it enough? Does it cover our stated goals? Can we do more? we all fear, a lot of the hunters fear of 2027, making this $1 rule in 2027. A lot can happen in that year. We talk about the changes, the new governor, the new DNR director, multiple new commissioners. We're scared to death that it isn't going to make it that far. In 2026, we wanted it in 2026. You gave the objections of why so many people bought combo tags already. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that deer regulations have changed midstream. I know at least once, if not multiple times. I mean, it's not unheard of. We could have did it, but it's too late now. Social media is blowing up over and influencers with large followings. And we have a podcast right in the hall now, if for your information. But social media has been blowing up with criticism, and most of it's been focused on comments by a couple of commissioners that weren't very well thought out. And frankly, they reflect poorly on the entire commission. Please look at the big picture. We're not interested in rambling personal anecdotes. I want you to, and allowing exceptions for the UP is out of control. I mean, why we allowed exceptions for the UP is beyond me. You're opening up a Pandora's box. Now there's legislation being proposed in the UP, well, in the statewide, for a 10-person commission, 10 people, that's going to be tie votes. 7's a much better number, but 10-person commission for an NRC in the UP only. I mean, you've opened up a Pandora's box. Commissioner Fewens, thank you for that white paper. Hopefully the white paper and the guidelines that will follow will address some of these issues. We've made some progress. Thank you for that. Any questions? I didn't think so.
Okay. Bob, you're up.
Good morning, commissioners, director. Over the last few regulation cycles, I've been here for quite a few of them now, different talks. My eyes have really been opened up on what I referred to last month as a failed process. And I also brought that up this past spring. Excuse me, and I brought it up last fall, and I've been starting to be more vocal about it, this regulation cycle. So I want to thank the commission for actually taking this up and having a serious look at it. I think it's extremely important to have the wildlife conservation order and all the amendments in place for us to have our final public comment on it 2 months prior to the vote actually taking place. We all know that when we come in here this past month in May, our public comment at that point is meaningless. The decisions are already made up. Our opportunity for public comment, if you guys want to build trust with us, needs to be had before any of the after all the amendments are made prior to the vote. The other thing that I would really like to see added to that, and I asked for this back in March. You guys get the wildlife conservation order. We sit down, we listen to a presentation from Chad and Brent. They go over the science, the biology, the reasons behind it, the likely outcome. If you guys are going to make an amendment to the WCO, I would really expect that you guys, if you're going to change something different than what our trained experts, guys that have spent decades in the field, in their profession doing, that you would offer up your interpretation of the science and reason for that change, what you might think the likely outcome of that change would be, and what kind of impacts it would have on our overall management plan. That's the least we can ask from you guys if we want some trust from you guys that we're all on the same team. We're all part of that proverbial three-legged stool, and we've got to have some trust between us. And I'm not saying that the amendments are wrong or they lack science or lack merit, any of them, but there's no explanations given to any of them. And the fact that I had to come in here or drive up to Gaylord a day early, even to find out what those amendments were, I went up early on Tuesday just to try to catch somebody that could fill me in on what the new amendments that were on the agenda that we had no idea what to comment or how they were going to play out. And I commend you guys for making an effort to fix that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Pagel.
Commissioners, Director. Like many of the others, I would like to applaud you on the study on the scientific management. I think that is just a great direction for things to go. And I loved hearing the discussion on the process. Coming from the business world, that was something that we all had to live by. Everything had to be documented, measurable, and repeatable. And if we can move in that direction with this commission, I am all for it in every way. Something that came up that I'm very interested in is I shot a turkey here this year, and when I went to report it, there was granularity in weapon. Yet we asked firearm, crossbow, recurve bow, longbow, compound bow. There was tremendous granularity in that reporting. On the deer side, I don't see consistency in that same question. Some years it seems that they ask that question, and other years we don't. And as we went through this regulation cycle, I think that those are data points that are very important to not only the hunters, but the commission, because different seasons with different weapons, the impact of the harvest, I think, is very, very important for all of us to know, to determine if certain weapons or certain seasons are having larger impact by the weapons that are available there. So just some granularity and some consistency in that reporting, I think, would be wonderful. The last thing I'd like to address is the shotgun line. I'm involved with a number of bow hunting organizations and 3 or 4 different sportsmen's clubs. And I have not gotten a lot of sportsmen pushing back on the $1. Most of the people I know are more than happy to take a number of does. We know what the impact of the does are going to be. But there are a number of people that are very concerned about the high-powered rifles. Many of them were very happy to hear 30-30s, 45-70s, 444 Marlins, these sort of weapons, but they all have similar ballistics to the inlines that are, or to the straight cases that are out there today. The issues are when you start throwing 7 mags, 300 wins, 30-06s. A lot of guys want to use grandpa's old lever action, but they're really concerned about the guy on the 5 acres next to him having the high-powered weapon. So just input from various sportsmen that I've talked to over the last month, but I thought it was pertinent for you guys to hear. So thank you.
Thank you. Josh.
I guess we are afternoon. I was going to say good morning. I thought we made it, but went longer than I thought it would. I didn't plan on talking today, but I heard some things. I figured I'd just make a couple comments. You know, I think as a public landowner, I try my best not to put the freedoms of myself, the tool, over the management of the resource. I think that's important. I think that's how we all should be, whether it's public or private, but I think it's essentially important on our public lands. And I've said over and over again publicly to do what's best for the resource, right? If Chad or Brent or Shannon, any of these people came to me and said $1 wasn't the right thing to do and here's the reasons why, I would take their word for it as the expert. The more data, the better. And I think that we need to really focus on that. And, you know, the North American model states that scientific management is the proper means for wildlife management. And that's why I think that what Brandon is bringing forward and you guys are having discussions about are essentially important. I want to commend him for that. And I think, you know, we're talking scientific management. We brought forth in May a amendment to do crossbows late season on the UP on the account of 1 person. Is that scientific management? Is that really what that means? So I just want to encourage, as you guys go through this, to put some real time into it. 17 pages, obviously, you have put some time into it. So thank you for that. But take your time, get it right, make sure it's perfect. We appreciate it, and be transparent about it. You know, if you guys need some input, let us know, have some conversations with us. But we really appreciate those two things, the resolution and, you know, the policy updates. So I just wanted to commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Merle, you're up.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Much like Josh, I wasn't going to say anything today, but, and I'm not here to talk in support or in objection to any particular regulation, but I am here to support gravity, basic science and physics, and intellectual honesty. The 450 Bushmaster, which was the caliber du jour for the restricted rifle zone, can travel about 1.5 miles if it's shot at a 45-degree angle. Just ran the ballistics on it on my phone. Of course, shooting that gun at a 45-degree angle would be illegal discharge of a firearm, an unsportsmanlike conduct. A 50 caliber BMG, which is about one of the largest rifles you can buy, would be absolutely ridiculous to hunt deer with, but for the purpose of this explanation, the most powerful long-range rifle you can buy, if it's sighted in at 200 or 300 yards, either way I run the calculation, it doesn't matter. If it's sighted in at that range and it's shot parallel with gravity, with the ground at a target at a white-tailed deer height, just from ground level on flat ground, is going to hit the dirt somewhere around 700 yards. And it's done. So at the end of the day, the ballistics calculation states that this is a problem of personal responsibility. It's the hunter's responsibility. We all know that. We all learned that. And anything outside of that responsibility is illegal, because you've not fulfilled your legal charge. There are laws in this state that apply to that. And that is what should dictate that, the answer to that solution. Again, I'm not here to argue it. That's already been settled. But the point of the matter is we have to make those decisions based upon actual real science. That's the simple version of it. If anybody wants anything more detailed, I'll be glad to provide it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, it is 12:24, and that concludes public comments. Everybody's okay, we'll move right into, we don't have any action items other than the director's action items, but reports, if you're willing. Any dissenters from that? No? Okay. All right. So there are no action items for the director this month. There are 4 land transactions this month.
Yes, we will be signing these 4 land transactions.
Are there any comments or concerns with any of those, commissioners? All right, hearing none. Do plan to sign all those. All right, for NRC and director's orders, we don't have any for action this month. So we're down to committee reports. Wildlife Committee.
We needed a break,
Didn't we?
so nothing to report.
All right, Fisheries Committee.
Met last week with some of the fisheries team, and one of the things that I like that is a little bit of a change, and I think that we can incorporate this into our efforts to reevaluate our good governance, is that the Fisheries Committee is bringing forth not only their recommendations, but also other topics that have been discussed for ideas, right? So, we'll have a better idea of not only what they're recommending, but also other topics that they talked about and debated amongst themselves. And I think that will give the commission a greater understanding just in general. I know that was, I think, that was posted, Lucas, was that was posted in the OneDrive? Was that? It's not. Okay, I know you shared it with me. Yeah, and I guess I would request at this point that gets posted to the OneDrive. That way all commissioners can view not only the recommendations, but also the other alternatives that were discussed. And in addition to that, I would request that most everything that's being recommended right now are pretty much technical fixes, pretty straightforward. If any of the commissioners want to take a look at something, I would just ask that you let the Chief Claremont know as soon as possible, and give me a heads up as well. That way I'm aware of it. Other than that, that's all I have right now.
All right, thank you. You all participate in the Governance and Finance Committee, so I don't think an additional report is necessary. We'll go to Commissioner reports. Commissioner Walters.
About a week and a half ago, my wife and I floated the Asavo River to celebrate our 34th anniversary. Normally she outfishes me. This year I am successful with a 23-inch rainbow 5-pounder. So the best rainbow I've ever caught in my life. Excuse me. And she was very proud. On June 1st, I let my dog out to take a leak, and he discovered there was a fawn in our yard. It was quite interesting. Nonetheless, I got him back in the house quickly, but we did get a picture, and I just caution those that do see small ones to let them be. Mother is not far away. And finally, I'd like to recognize, excuse me, my best buddy's son, who was in the state championship in golf, junior at Gaelic St. Mary's, excuse me, and finished 9th in the state. So, Georgie Mertz, congratulations. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Eister.
I just want to say that John shared that picture of that pond with all of us. Lovely picture, and I shared with him the fact that I got a deer the night before. So, there was one new one that came in the world, and one that got taken out by my front bumper. So, that's my report. Nothing else. Thanks.
Commissioner Early.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Bewens.
I'd like to make just a quick comment on dams. This has been an issue that we had brought up a few months ago. And I was looking at an article a couple days ago, and I just want to throw this out there for what it's worth. In Traverse City, and that's where I'm from, obviously, on the Boardman River, we've been through a process of removing several dams. And most recently, there is a new project called Fish Pass. And so that's replacing the old Union Street Dam, which cuts through downtown Traverse City. So it bisects the city in half. Looking at what happened with the floods back in April, there was an engineering analysis that was conducted recently, and what they related was that the Union Street Dam would have been overtopped, right, and it would have failed. And so the flooding from Boardman Lake, once that would have happened, would have went right through downtown Traverse City. Why do I bring this up? A couple months ago, the commission voted unanimously to oppose the sale of 13 dams by Consumers Energy to Confluence Energy. I say that because, once again, I just want to highlight the importance of these aging infrastructure and the danger it poses not only to public safety, but also the public resource. And so this is far from settled, but I just want to raise the flag one more time that the importance of doing the right thing and selling these dams to a private equity firm would put public safety and the public resource at rest. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Deputy Director Law.
Not a whole lot, other than personal note. I got to turkey hunt, finally get out. And I took 3 other folks out as well, and everybody got a bird. So turkeys are my favorite. That's what I love to talk about and what I love to do in the woods. So I just wanted to report that had a successful season and able to take others out. And we also had several other events where turkeys were taken. So it was a good year.
Any text? Any text?
No?
No?
Didn't do anything.
Good.
Yeah, it is a fabulous tick season this year. They're very abundant at this point. And it's not fair that you send us photographs of your turkey hunting success when we're working on commission business, but that's another matter. I'd just like to report a couple of things. On a federal level, right now there's a rule out that opens up hunting in a lot of the federal refuges. For those of you who may or may not know, federal refuges, when they're created, are usually closed unless opened. And for years, the state agencies have advocated for increased emphasis put on the availability of hunting on some of those refuge lands where it can be done. Many of them are bought for a specific purpose, and yet other outdoor recreation can be created. So that rule is out right now for public review. If you have any inclination, I suggest you look it up, make comments on it. There's also some additional rules right now regarding some of the national forest land. So take a look at those. Other than that, I was fortunate enough to leave the last meeting after we voted on regs, and the next day have my contact information appear on a social media site directing me to as the person to contact if you have any feelings about beading. I am still digging my way out of all those contacts. So anybody that might be listening who hasn't gotten a return call, I am still working my way through it.
That might have been my fault.
Yeah, well, we'll forgive you someday. So although I went out, all I had were a couple jakes that I brought in 2 different times. So they lived for another year. I hope. All right, with that, are there any other comments, questions from commissioners? Hearing none, our next meeting is July 8th, and it'll be at this same location. Be here, be square, as they say. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.